What's up, everyone? We are diving back into the multiverse today for another epic. What if Naruto fell in love with Tsunade when went back in time part 1? You enjoy this story? Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. Standing in the middle of this battlefield off the southern coast of Fire Country, is a lone man. The man in question stands at 5 feet 8, with a fit and lithe frame, whose very stance screams dangerous. He has spiky sun-kissed blonde hair, his eyes which are usually a dark blue are now purple with 3 concentric rings around the black pupil, and 3 tome-like markings on each of the first 2 rings, the Rinnegan. He also has 3 whisker-like marks on each of his cheeks. He is wearing a worn and tattered dark orange tracksuit, with black along the shoulders, zipper, and bottom of his jacket, and black lines down his pant legs. On his feet are black shinobi sandals, under his jacket he wears mesh armor, and around his forehead is a headband with a leaf symbol. This young man is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Chunin of the village hidden in the leaves, Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed demon fox Kyubi no Yoko, hero of the leaf, son of the 4th Hokage, Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze and the Red Death, Aka no Shi, Kushina Uzumaki, and most recently the only survivor of the 4th Shinobi War. As he looks around at the bodies of his comrades scattered around, he can't help but to shake his head at the pointless loss of lives. It was all going so well too. Sure, the revelation that the man who had called himself Madara Uchiha was really his father's wayward student Obito Uchiha was shocking. Yes, the army of dead shinobi and kunoichi was freaky and difficult to deal with, but they managed to seal most of them away, and even stop the caster of the impure world reincarnation, Edo Tensei. No surprise, it was Kabuto. Nowhere things had started to go downhill is when the real Madara Uchiha managed to keep himself from being sent back to his death by the ending of the reincarnation technique. After that, all hell broke loose. The man who had once been considered to be on the level of a god just like his rival the first Hokage, Shodai Hokage, had proceeded to lay waste to the 5 Gokage, leaving them all on the edge of death. Then he had joined Obito in his fight against Naruto himself and the only other Jinchuriki yet to have his tailed beast extracted from him, Killer Bee, who held the 8-tailed ox octopus, Hachibi Ushi Oni. Very soon, however, they were overwhelmed and both tailed beasts were extracted from them to complete the 10 tails, Jubi. However, while the 2 Uchiha had been busy with the last 2 Jinchuriki, the third and final Uchiha had shown up with his team Hawk as well as Orochimaru. The wayward snake Sanin had healed the cage, and just after finishing 4 new undead appeared, shocking everyone. The 4 in question were the first 4 Hokage, Hashirama Senju, Tobirama Senju, Hiruzen Sarutobi, and Minato Namikaze. Together the 5 living cage, the 4 reincarnated Hokages, Team Hawk, as well as Orochimaru went off to help Naruto and B. Long story short, the fighting was fast and furious. Naruto, who was at the edge of death, was healed by his teammate Sakura, and then his father placed his half of the 9 tails, whose name is Kurama, into him. After that, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura joined together as Team 7 again to fight the 2 Uchiha, and the battle went well. Naruto managed to convince Obito to turn against Madara, but the ancient Uchiha controlled the other man to use his Rinnegan to bring himself back to life. After he came back to life, Madara sealed the 10 tails into himself, making him its Jinchuriki, causing the battle to become harder. Naruto and Sasuke both were visited by the father of all shinobi and the first man to possess the Rinnegan, the sage of 6 paths Rakudo Sennin, Hagoromo Otsutsuki. The old sage informed them that they were the current reincarnations of his 2 sons, the creators of the Uchiha and Senju clans, Indra and Asura. He then proceeded to give each of them a gift. To Naruto he gave his potent chakra along with the mark of the sun on his right hand. To Sasuke he gave 1 true Rinnegan, I also called the Rinne Sharingan, with his visual prowess and the mark of the moon on his left hand. Also Naruto had an added gift, that being a bit of the chakra of every one of the tailed beasts. After leaving the sage, the 2 young men had fought Madara on even footing, even gaining the upper hand on him to the point that he became so weakened that the 10 tails began to take him over and morph his body, only to morph into a woman in possession of very delicate facial features. She had extremely long, sweeping white hair that touched the ground. Most noticeable were 2 brown horns which stuck out from her head. She possessed the Byakugan, and also had a third eye on the center of her forehead, that's eyelids parted vertically. Her eyebrows were cut very short, a symbol of nobility, and she wore a dark shade of lipstick on her lips and a dark shade of nail polish on her long fingernails. She wore the transitional high-collared hime kimono, which was adorned with intricate lines that are gold and purple and tomo running down the center and edges of the gown. She was also pale-skinned. The woman turned out to be the mother of the sage, Kagaya Otsutsuki, also the mother of all chakra. The battle got much harder after that, to the point that Obito sacrificed his life for Naruto, and left Kakashi with both of his Sharingan eyes for a little while. In the end, Naruto and Sasuke were able to use their marks to seal her away after Sakura hit her from above, and it looked like it was all over, as the spirit of the sage and the spirits of all the dead cage teleported them back from Kagaya's dimension. However, it didn't last long, as Sasuke turned on them again, attempting to recapture the tailed beasts, and to keep that from happening, Sakura, Kakashi, and Naruto tried to stop him, which ended up with Sasuke killing the first two, and beginning a fight with Naruto. The two young men, who had become like gods themselves, fought tooth and nail. However, Naruto pulled his punches as he still thought his old friend could be redeemed. That illusion was shattered when Sasuke killed the 5 Kage, especially the 5th Hokage Tsunade Senju and the 5th Kage Gaara Sabaku, 2 of the blonde's precious people. After that, the gloves came off and the sage began to fight at full power, even entering into his Ashura avatar and fighting toe-to-toe with Sasuke's Susanoo avatar. In the end, Naruto managed to come out the victor, finally killing the last Uchiha with his original technique, Rasenshuriken. However, as he lay there dying, Sasuke smiled and congratulated his brother in all but blood, and then shocked him by telling him to take his eyes and use them to lead the world into a peaceful future, hence Naruto now having the Rinnegan. After shaking off the horrible memories of the past few days, the blonde turns towards the still present spirits of the sage and cages, as well as the reincarnated Hokage, as his father steps up to him. Naruto, I'm so sorry that you've had to go through all of this. I can't help but to put most of the blame on myself. If only I'd have been faster that night, then there would have been no need to seal Kurama inside you. You never would have had to go through the hardships you have if not for me, son. The younger blonde just shakes his head sadly. It's not your fault too, San. You did what you had to. No, I place the blame for all of this on the generations before yours. If they could have only stopped trying to prove who was more superior for so long and learned to get along, then it never would have given rise to monsters like Madara Uchiha. Minato can only nod sadly to his son's words, as can all the other Kage. However, Hagoromo gets a brilliant idea. What if you could change that? What if you could go back in time to a point before the Akatsuki, before even the Second Shinobi War? Would you take that chance to change events? Everyone looks at him in shock. However, Naruto only has to think on it for a second before he answers, yes. If it would mean I could save certain people from having to ever deal with the pain and suffering brought on by the Second and Third Wars, then I'd do it. The old sage smiles at this. Good, then I will give you that chance. There is a technique that I know which can be used to send you back in time. However, the power required for it is enormous, and it is why I myself never used it to go back and stop my mother from eating the chakra fruit. The ghost of the 3rd Kage, being ever the brilliant man, decides to ask, if that's true, then how are you to perform the technique now? If you haven't forgotten, you're as dead as we are. The old man simple chuckles. Ah, an inquisitive mind, you remind me of my son Asura, always asking questions. The answer is that with the 4 Hokage, as well as my sons and daughters the tailed beasts, we will have enough chakra required for this technique. However, all of you will have to help with the hand signs, as there are thousands. Everyone nods in understanding of this, even all 9 of the tailed beasts, who are more than happy to do their father a favor. Hagoromo turns to Naruto then, say your goodbyes, because once you have, there are some things you and I need to go over about the technique. The blonde nods his head and turns to the 4 Hokages, first speaking to Hashirama. Lord, first I just want to say that it's been an honor to meet you. I always heard stories about how strong you were but thought they weren't real. But after watching you in action, I have to say you're probably the most awesome Hokage ever. This causes the brown-haired man to rub the back of his head with a huge smile on his tan face. Well, thanks, Naruto-san. I want to say good luck to you in the past. I'm sure that wherever you're going, I'll already be dead, so I'll be sure to watch how you change the world. The blonde shakes his hand, then turns to the second. Lord Second, you're every bit the serious and pragmatic man that Iruka sensei always made you out to be in his lessons. But you're also pretty strong and cool in your own right. Before the other day I had no idea that you were the one to actually invent my dad's famous technique and use it first. In my book that's pretty dang cool. You're a true role model for what a shinobi should be. The white-haired Senju brother just crosses his arms, but has a small smirk on his face. Thank you Uzumaki-san, ordinarily I would reprimand you for wearing orange, but you've showed me that a ninja is more than stealth and doing what is necessary. You have showed me that being a ninja means remaining true to yourself, so never lose that spirit. I'll be watching you from the other side with my brother. He pats him on the shoulder and walks to stand next to his brother. The next person in the line nearly makes the blonde teen cry, however he gives the man a huge smile. Gigi, from you I learned the will of fire, but more importantly I learned what it's like to have a grandfather. You were always there for me when I needed you, and I know that you did your best to give me a normal life and for that I'll always be grateful. I hope that whenever I'm going back to that we can have just as close a relationship, maybe even a father, son or big brother, little brother one. I was so sad when you died old man but I realized that you'd want me to move forward and carry on your will of fire and so I've tried to. I hope you're proud of me. Sarutobi actually embraces the young man in a hug as he speaks. Naruto-kun, you have made this old man very proud. I've watched you from the pure world and have seen the man you've grown into and couldn't be any prouder if you were my actual grandson. You more than anyone embody the will of fire and have become a splendid shinobi. I'm sure that whatever time period you land in that you will achieve your dream and become Hokage. Always stay strong Naruto. When he steps back he pats his shoulder and then moves over to his two teachers and predecessors, leaving Naruto with his father to have a private moment. Minato looks down slightly at his son as he's 2 inches taller than him, and roams over his face, seeing his beloved Kushina in the teen's facial shape, and the rest himself, he smiles. Naruto, my son. Today is your birthday. How old are you now? The younger blonde looks up at him with a sad smile. I'm 17 today dad. The fourth Hokage just smiles wider. 17 huh? Pretty much a grown man. What a man you've grown into. I'm proud of you Naruto. And I'm sure if your mother were here she'd feel the same way, though she'd probably be trying to chase all the girls from you, ha ha ha. Naruto can't help but to chuckle at that and ask, you really think Ka-chan would be proud of me? Minato nods his head, I'm sure she would, and she'd be ecstatic that her Sochi was one of the most powerful shinobi to ever live. Never forget this one important thing no matter where you go. Naruto, your mother and I love you. This causes him to tear up and rush into his father's arms, giving him a huge hug, as the man pats his back. After a few minutes they separate and Naruto turns to the Sage of Six Paths. Alright Senin Gigi, tell me all about this jutsu. The old sage chuckles at his enthusiasm but answers nonetheless. Alright then, first thing you need to know is that we're aiming to send you back to a few years after the first war. Secondly, you won't be going back as you are now, meaning not as a 17-year-old. The technique will do one of two things, A. De-age you to a younger form, or B. Send your spirit and chakra into the body of a freshly born baby. The young sage's jaw drops at this. What? I can't go back as a baby. I'd have to completely start from scratch with all my techniques and everything. I'd take de-aging over that. Speaking of which, how much would I de-age? Hagoromo shakes his head. As far as de-aging goes, you would go back to the form of yourself at about 4 years old. Also, you'll get to keep your gifts, meaning you will still retain the bloodlines given to you by the tailed beasts, as well as the Rinnegan and the Six Paths Sage mode. However, you want the Rinne Sharingan or the Six Paths mode right away, those you will have to train to gain back, as will you have to train yourself in the lava, magnet, and boil releases, not to mention the elements that make them up. The blonde crosses his arms at that. I guess that makes sense. Alright, I'm fine with training my skills back up. Heck, I can even take the time to properly learn Fuinjutsu and then maybe I can find the two ends Hiraishin and learn and improve it myself. Anything else I should know? The old monk nods his head. Yes, as a result of the Rinnegan you now have a major affinity to all 5 elements, and will gain the additional sub-elements of ice and wood, but again you will have to work for them. Also, your appearance will change slightly. Mostly just your hair. You will gain the red hair of all Uzumaki. Oh, and your summoning contract to the toads will be void. so you'll have to find another animal to summon, perhaps even of a canine type. Naruto's face brightens slightly at the mention of gaining the wood release and his first real friend Haku's ice release, and even smiles brightly at the fact that he's going to have his mother's pretty red hair finally, but frowns at losing the toads, completely missing the hint of what animal he should gain a contract with instead. After a few moments takes a breath, okay, I understand, well, let's get this show on the road. 6 paths Gigi. The old sage smiles and nods his head as he singles all the cage to begin. Their hand sings as he begins his, and the tailed beasts begin to focus their chakra, causing a huge flare of light. Once all the signs are done and the right amount of energy is gathered, the old man intones, hidden samsara technique, space-time transportation. After he says this, a rip in space and time opens up in front of Naruto, and the blonde takes one more look at his father and the other Hokages before he steals his nerves and jumps into the swirling mass of lights, and seconds later the young half of Kurama jumps in after him and the rip closes. The 4 Hokages' bodies begin to break apart as Minato turns to the old sage, are you sure this will work? That Naruto will be able to change things? The original god of shinobi, Shinobi no Kami, looks seriously at the man. I have the utmost faith in him. After all, he is the current reincarnation of my son Asura. However, he won't be able to change everything. The second and third wars will still occur, however their outcomes will be altered due to his presence. He will also be able to bridge the gaps between the nations over time and keep groups like Akatsuki from having to form at all. In the end, all you can do is believe in your son, as I believed in mine. Minato nods his head at this as he finishes breaking apart, and his spirit as well as those of all the other cage present head back to the pure world. Hagoromo takes one last looks at the remaining 8-tailed beasts and smiles, you are all free, my children. Live your lives how you see fit from here on. Goodbye. With that, he fades away back to his own dimension, as the tailed beasts all head their separate ways. Inside the portal, pain. That is all he can feel as he hurls through time. He can feel all his bones cracking and shrinking in on themselves, and he knows he's de-aging. All he can see aside from the lights of the tunnel are images playing backwards of events from the elemental nations. Then he feels an influx of demonic chakra enter his system and in his hazy state asks internally, Kurama, what's going on? What are you doing in there? From within his mindscape he gets a response from his tenant and partner, sorry about that, Kit. That influx just now was my young half coming back and joining back with me. Good news is I'm whole again, and that means you'll have more power to use from me later on. Bad news is that your chakra reserves are going to be double what they originally were when you were 4, which means way more chakra control training. All he can do is sigh, just great, oh well, at least I might finally get my chakra control up to a good enough level to perform genjutsu and even medical ninjutsu. Just after having that thought, he sees the portal open back up and knows that he's about to be deposited at his destination. Hidden Leaf Village. Training Ground 7. 1 YAFW, year after First War. The skies around the village can be seen clouding over and becoming dark, something which makes all the shinobi in the village go on edge as they can tell this isn't a natural occurrence. In Training Ground 7 there's a large flash of light, the opening of a rift in space, and then a huge explosion which scares away all animals in the area. After the explosion the rift closes and disappears, and when the smoke clears it shows the small body of a 4-year-old Naruto in a crater. Only he's different. Whereas before he had blonde hair, his hair is now blood red, still spiky but much shorter than it was. Think his hair 2 years after the Fourth War, and his whisker marks are now gone. Also his clothes have changed. He's now in a white t-shirt with the Uzumaki spiral on the front, and tan-colored shorts, and on his feet are white shinobi sandals. After a few minutes a group shinobi arrive in the training grounds, surrounding the crater. These shinobi are all wearing white animal masks, they are the elite unit of the village, the Anbu, and leading them is a young man of 21, he stands at 5 feet 4, is a tan-skinned man with spiky dark brown hair, and a small goatee on his chin, and brown eyes. He wears an all-black jumpsuit with mesh segments over the lower portions of his limbs, and a green gauntlet that covers much of his right arm. He also wears an armored hood with a bandana-like forehead protector over this, tied with 2 long straps, and on the back of his jumpsuit is the kanji for Third Hokage. This man is the third Hokage of the Leaf, the new god of shinobi, Hiruzen Sarutobi. He takes in the scene quickly, and seeing that there is no danger, he motions for his men to stand down and he makes his way into the crater and to the child. He turns the boy over and looks him over, searching for any wounds. After a few moments he finds none but can sense that the child is suffering from chakra exhaustion. The Anbu with a cat mask steps forward. Lord Hokage, we should check the boy for traps. He could be a spy. The young man shakes his head. No, that's not necessary. I've already checked him for any traps and found none. He has chakra exhaustion and needs to go to the hospital. Besides, based on his hair color and the clan crest on his shirt, I'd say he's an Uzumaki, and if that's true then he won't be harmed. We'll have to wait till he wakes up to find out how he got here. You're all dismissed. With that they all disappear via body flicker, heading back to their posts, while Hiruzen himself body flickers to the hospital to have the boy treated. When he arrives he explains the situation to the nurses and doctors and they take the red head to give him the standard treatment for chakra exhaustion. He also orders that the boy be placed in a private room, and to be notified as soon as he wakes. With that done he heads off to the Senju compound to have a chat with the current head and matriarch of the clan, Mito Uzumaki Senju. Senju compound. Minutes later. A few minutes later Sarutobi arrives to the Senju compound, which is one of the 3 largest compounds in the village, rivaled only by the Uchiha and Hyuga clan compounds. The compound itself is like a mini village, surrounded by wooden walls all laden with various seals to strengthen them. Inside there are many houses for the members of the clan, and as he walks through the streets of the compound he notices a few houses empty as a result of the residents having died in the First War, which only ended last year. Also as he walks he's greeted by many of the still living clan members, to which he just nods his head at them. Eventually he reaches his destination, the main house which belongs to the head of the clan. It's a 2-story traditional Japanese-style house with shoji doors, and above the front door is a huge version of the Senju clan symbol, a Vajra. He knocks on the door and awaits an answer. A few moments later the door is answered, but not by who he expected, as he looks down and sees a small 4-year-old girl. The girl has long blonde hair which is done up into twin short pigtails. She is fair-skinned with big brown eyes, and her cheeks have a bit of rosiness to them that comes from youth. She is wearing a cream-colored sundress. This girl is Tsunade Senju, granddaughter to Mito and the late first Hokage Hashirama Senju, second in line to the Senju clan after her own father. Seeing the little girl, Hiruzen smiles down at her. Hello Tsunade-chan, is your grandmother home by any chance? The little blonde, upon seeing who's at the door, gives a beaming smile. Ba-chan is in the sitting room. Come on, I'll show you where. Saru-oji. She grabs his hand and tries to drag him along. All he can do is chuckles at the little girl's enthusiasm and go along with her, remembering to kick off his sandals in the entryway first. As they walk to the sitting room, Tsunade is babbling away about her training and how the academy is going as she joined it just this year. Hiruzen for his part only makes small comments here and there. However, she abruptly asks, "Say Saru-oji-san, why do you need to talk to Ba-chan?" This catches the Hokage off guard slightly. However, he catches himself and answers, "It's a personal matter, Tsunade-chan. I'm sure Mito-sama will tell you about it much later on." This causes the girl to pout. However, it doesn't last long as they reach the sitting room and she opens the door and announces their arrival. Ba-chan. Saru-oji is here to see you. Inside the room sits a woman a little older than 50, however looks no older than 30. She has long bright red hair and large pupil-less eyes. She wears an elaborate, high-collared kimono with the Uzushiogakure symbol on the back of the obi, which is tied around her waist. Her hair is arranged into buns with hair pins in them and 3 clips in the front. She also wears a dark shade of red lipstick and has a gem-like marking on her forehead. She also wears tags with kanji written on them in her hair decals. All in all, she's a beautiful woman and one of the strongest kunoichi to ever live. This is Mito Uzumaki Senju. Mito, upon seeing both her granddaughter and her husband and brother-in-law's student, smiles at them. "Su-chan, how many times have I told you not to just barge in?" This causes the girl to scowl slightly. "Sorry, Ba-chan." The woman nods her head and turns to the Hokage himself. "Saru-chan, how good to see you. Though I'm surprised that you could take the time away from your duties to visit. Is this a social call or part of your official duties as Sandaime Hokage?" The 21-year-old sighs at her still calling him Saru-chan, but shakes his head and responds, actually it's a little of both Mito-sama. I need to have a private word with you about an incident that happened about an hour ago. The red-haired woman nods her head and turns to Tsunade. Su-chan, you run along now, maybe go and play with some of the other children. The little blonde nods her head and runs off, as Sarutobi steps into the room and closes the door, and a moment later the room glows blue then stops, as Mito has just activated a privacy seal. He takes a seat on a mat opposite her and begins, now as you know 1 hour ago the skies over the village suddenly clouded over and darkened. She nods to this as he continues, well I knew it wasn't a natural occurrence and at first feared maybe Cloud Village was launching an attack with their storm release users. That turned out not to be the case. There was suddenly an explosion in the 7th training grounds and so I and a group of Anbu went to check out the scene. What we found was not what we expected at all. Mito hums at this and asks, what did you find then? The younger man sighs as he answers, we found a crater, obviously created by the explosion, however inside the crater wasn't an enemy nin, but a child. This shocks the redhead as her eyes widen slightly, a child. How old? The man nods, yes a child, about the same age as Tsunade-chan I would guess, so about 4 years old. However that's not the oddest thing. The oddest thing is that despite being in the middle of a huge explosion he had no injuries at all, the only thing that looked wrong with him was chakra exhaustion. So after checking him over for any traps of any kind and finding nothing I ordered the Anbu back to their positions and took him to the hospital where he is being treated now. Mito sighs in relief at that news, but looks at him in confusion, while it is good that the child is okay, I don't see why you had to come here to inform me of his arrival. Hiruzen chuckles at that and rubs the back of his head nervously, well you see what I left out was that the boy has blood red hair, and was wearing a shirt with the Uzumaki symbol on the front of it. Going off those things I deduced that he's possibly a member of the Uzumaki clan, and therefore one of your kinsmen. She sighs at this and decides to reprimand him, you should have mentioned that to begin with Saru-chan. But just because the boy was wearing my clan's symbol and has red hair does not mean he is an Uzumaki. Not everyone with red hair is of the Uzumaki clan baka. The 21-year-old nods at her point, true, but there's an easy way to find out if he is in fact an Uzumaki. First is to wait till he awakes and ask him, and second is to see just how large his chakra pool is when it's fully restored. Mito nods her head at this and the two then begin to talk about other things, however when the conversation moves to his love life he decides that it's time to go and heads back to the front door. Just after he puts on his sandals the door opens and in walks a man. This man is taller than himself, standing at 5 feet 10, with straight dark brown hair and brown eyes, and tan skin like himself. This man is Itama Senju, the son of Mito and Hashirama, father of Tsunade, and heir to the Senju clan, named for one of his father's brothers who died during the clan wars. Itama upon seeing him smiles, Hiruzen. Good to see you. Are you leaving? Sarutobi smiles at his slightly older friend, yes afraid so. I've been visiting with your mother, but now I have to get back to my arch enemy. Paperwork. This causes Itama to chuckle and pat him on the shoulder, I don't envy you being Hokage my friend. Well see you around, try to come back sometime and we'll spar. The younger man smiles at his friend and nods his head, as the man takes off his sandals and heads into the house, while he himself body flickers away back to the Hokage Tower. Leaf Hospital. 2 days later. Naruto groans as he begins to wake up. The first thing that hits his senses is the smell of disinfectant and bleach, and he knows right away where he's at. Great, I'm in the hospital, the one place I hate the most. Wonder how long I've been out. A moment later he opens his eyes to see the white ceiling of the hospital confirming his thoughts, as he lifts his right arm up to look at it and sees how small it is, meaning the old sage's jutsu worked. A few seconds later a nurse walks in to check his vitals and seeing him awake smiles, "Ah, you're awake little one. How are you feeling?" He looks at the woman for a moment and answers, "I feel okay I guess." "How long have I been out nurse-san?" The woman giggles at this and responds, "My name is Nanase little one. You've been here 2 days recovering from chakra exhaustion. Now lay still while I check up on your condition." He nods his head as she does some hand signs and checks his vitals and sees how his chakra pools are doing, however when she does her eyes widen, as he has more chakra than most chunin. She quickly gets over her shock and stops running her diagnostics. Well, everything seems to be good, and might I say you have some impressive chakra levels for a 4-year-old. He blushes a little at this. Thank you. So can I get out of here now? She shakes her head at his question. I'm afraid not. You'll have to stay here a while longer. We have to inform Hokage-sama that you've awakened, and I'm sure he'll have some questions for you. So until then, just rest up and we'll bring you some breakfast. With that, she turns and walks out the door to inform the Chunin guarding his room to summon the Hokage. After a few minutes, she returns with a tray of hospital breakfast for him, which he begrudgingly eats even though it tastes like crap. While he's eating his breakfast, Sarutobi walks in, and when Naruto sees him, his eyes widen slightly, as he recognizes the man, but didn't think he'd be coming back to when he was so young. He quickly covers up his surprise as the third Hokage comes over and sits at his bedside. Well, young man, it's good to see you're awake. You were in quite a state when we found you. The nurse tells me your chakra pools are fully restored and that you can leave here today after a few shots. The redhead nods at this, even though he makes a face at the thought of shots. However, Sarutobi continues on. Now I have a few questions for you. First off, can you tell me your name? The boy thinks on it a second and then decides to go with his actual name and answers, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. Who are you, mister? The man chuckles at this. My name is Hiruzen Sarutobi, and I'm the third Hokage. It's nice to meet you, Naruto-kun. Now can you tell me how you ended up here in the leaf? The redhead starts to panic internally, trying to come up with a believable story. However, he suddenly gets a great backstory and gets a sad look on his face. He starts his story. I'm not sure how I got here, Lord Hokage. All my life I've lived with my parents in the land of waves, Nami no Kuni. But recently they died, attacked by bandits, and I was orphaned. They always said we came from a proud lineage but never elaborated, though they did say that if I was ever in trouble I could go to the Hidden Leaf Village, and I planned to in a few years. But when I was going through some of my 2chan stuff I found this seal and it activated, and then after that it's a blank. Next thing I know I'm waking up here. Sarutobi listens intently, and thinks over the boy's story, and notices a few inconsistencies, but decides not to call him on them. I see. Well, Naruto-kun, it seems you may have stumbled on an experimental seal meant for teleportation. You're lucky that it didn't kill you and all you ended with was chakra exhaustion. Now your parents were right when they said you come from a proud lineage. You are a member of the Uzumaki clan of the Land of Whirlpools. The Uzumaki clan is well known for their incredible pools of chakra, their longevity, and their skills in fuinjutsu as well as kenjutsu. He sees Naruto's eyes light up at this as he continues on. Also, the Uzumaki clan is the cousin clan to one of the founding clans of the Leaf, the Senju. As a matter of fact, the current head of the Senju clan is a woman named Mito Uzumaki Senju, and I'm sure that she would love to take you in, being that you're clansmen. She also has a granddaughter your age that I'm sure you'll get along with. Naruto smiles and nods at this in response. Good, then after your shots I'll take you to meet with Mito-sama. The redhead gets confused at this and asks, why do you call her Mito-sama? Aren't you the leader of the village? Hiruzen chuckles at this. Ha ha ha, yes I am, but Mito-sama is the widow of the first Hokage, and holds a high position within the village. That is why everyone gives her the proper respect and calls her Mito-sama, all except her immediate family, that is. Naruto nods at this as he finishes his food, and Sarutobi stands up and motions for the doctor and nurse to come in and give him his shots and whatnot. While they're giving him his shots, they also take some blood to run tests on. When it's all done, everyone walks out of the room so he can change back into his clothes. When he's done with that, Sarutobi signs him out of the hospital and leads him to the Senju compound. Senju main house. After walking through the village together and talking a little more, they eventually reach the Senju compound. Naruto's first reaction to the sight of it is to have his jaw drop at just how large it is. However, that's nothing to his reaction to the main house. This is where I'm gonna be living. Question mark. It's a mansion. Sarutobi chuckles at this. You're not wrong. However, what you should know is that the first Hokage himself built this house using his bloodline, the wood release Mokuton. In fact, he built this entire compound using his powers. Then Mito-sama went around and applied strengthening seals to each of the homes and the walls, which make the wooden constructs as strong as steel. I'm sure that she will be teaching you how to do such things in the future. The redhead can only nod at this as the young man knocks on the door. Moments later it's answered, except this time by Mito herself. Seeing this, Sarutobi bows to her slightly. Mito-sama, it's good to see you again. I've someone for you to meet. He then grips Naruto's shoulder and pushes him forward slightly. Mito Uzumaki Senju meet Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto Uzumaki meet Mito Uzumaki Senju. Mito looks at the 4-year-old with a critical eye and does notice that he has a lot of the typical Uzumaki features, especially the red hair. However, it's as she uses her meager chakra sensing ability that she confirms he's indeed an Uzumaki. Incredible, only 4 and already he has the reserves of a high Chunin. That tears it. There is no doubt in my mind that this child is of my clan. With that thought in mind, she smiles sweetly at him and bends down slightly to be at his level. It's nice to meet you, Naruto-kun. Welcome to your new home, I hope that you find it comfortable. Naruto bows his head and responds, thank you, Mito-sama, it's nice to meet you too. I've never met any other member of my family before. The older redhead scowls at this slightly, but her face quickly softens and she uses her right hand to lift his face so he's looking right at her. None of that, Sama, stuff out of you, little one. We are family, so therefore you may call me Mito Obasan. Now come inside so that you can meet the rest of the family. Saru-chan, thank you for bringing him. If you wouldn't mind filling out the paperwork to have him entered into the academy for me, that would be appreciated. She proceeds to bring Naruto inside and shuts the door before the Hokage has a chance to answer, as he stands there blinking in shock. What the? Sigh, I guess I have no choice but to comply. I swear I should have just let Danzo have the Hokage seat and let him deal with all the paperwork. On second thought, it's better that I'm Hokage and he's an Anbu captain, he'd have us still at war. He then shakes his head and disappears in a leaf body flicker. Inside the house, Mito leads little Naruto towards the family room where her son, daughter-in-law and granddaughter are sitting. As they walk, she tells him all about the history between the Senju and Uzumaki clans, regaling him with the story of how her father secured the alliance between the cousin clans with her marriage to Hashirama and how they came to love each other in time. Eventually they reach the family room and enter as everyone looks curiously at the little redhead. Sitting with Itama and Tsunade is another woman. She has long blonde hair with 2 bangs that perfectly frame her face. She has fair skin and green eyes, with a buxom figure. This woman is Amaya Senju. The 3 look curiously at the matriarch as Itama asks, Ka-chan, who's the kid? Mito smiles and places a hand on the boy's shoulder. This Itama-chan is Naruto Uzumaki. He is 4 years old and an orphan, and as he is a member of my clan, I have volunteered to take him in and raise him. Naruto-kun, this is my immediate family. The man is my only son and next head of the Senju clan, Itama. The blonde-haired woman is his wife and my daughter-in-law Amaya. Finally, the little girl sitting on Itama's lap is my granddaughter Tsunade-chan, she's the same age as yourself. Naruto waves at everyone, hello, nice to meet you all. Tsunade gets down off her father's lap and walks straight up to the redhead, inspects him closely, which kind of freaks him out, but only because there's a miniature version of his mother figure staring him in the face. After a few moments she backs off, smiles and puts out her hand, nice to meet you, Naruto-san. Wanna be friends? The redhead blinks at this, but smiles nonetheless and takes her hand, shaking it and responds, yeah sure Tsunade-san, I'd like that. With that she drags him over to the couch and they little group get to know each other better for the rest of the day, eating a small family dinner, and then retire for the night. Mito leads Naruto to an empty room on the 2nd floor and opens the door for him. This will be your room from now on, Naruto-kun. I know that you just lost your parents recently, but I hope in time that you will come to view us as your family and this house as your home. Tomorrow morning after breakfast we will go out into the village to get you some more clothes, as well as supplies for the academy. Rest well, little one, good night. Naruto for his part nods his head and responds, thank you Mito Oba, I'm really grateful for all this. Good night. She smiles at his as he heads inside the room and closes the door behind him. He proceeds to head over to the bed and lay down, then he closes his eye and when he reopens them he finds himself in the familiar space of his mindscape. When he looks down at the water he sees his 17-year-old self reflected back except with his new red hair and minus the whiskers, then he looks up at the towering form of Kurama, well we made partner. I've gotta say it was a shock seeing Sarutobi Gigi that young, but even more shocking to see Ba-chan as a little girl. The giant fox just snorts at that. Tell me about it, Kit. I'd estimate that we're back about 15 years before the Second Shinobi War. Starting tomorrow you're going to have to haul as and start training to get back in shape and get a leg up on becoming strong enough to stop things from going pear-shaped. Also don't draw on my chakra when you're around any leaf ninja, it will only end badly seeing as in this time I'm sealed inside of Mito. Naruto nods to that and yaws, alright well I'm going to actually go to sleep, talk to you another time Kurama. With that he disappears from his mind, getting his rest for the days ahead. Last time, the giant fox just snorts at that. Tell me about it, Kit. I'd estimate that we're back about 15 years before the Second Shinobi War. Starting tomorrow you're going to have to haul as and start training to get back in shape and get a leg up on becoming strong enough to stop things from going pear-shaped. Also don't draw on my chakra when you're around any leaf ninja, it will only end badly seeing as in this time I'm sealed inside of Mito. Naruto nods to that and yaws, alright well I'm going to actually go to sleep, talk to you another time Kurama. With that he disappears from his mind, getting his rest for the days ahead. Now, Senju main house. 5 a.m. next day. Our red-haired hero awakens with the sun. As he sits up in his bed he proceeds to rub the sleep from his eyes, then he stretches his arms over his head as he releases a yawn. After that's done he hops out of bed, his feet hitting the cold wooden floor softly as he goes over to the window and looks outside to see the sun just barely in the sky, and smiles. Alright, time to get to work on getting my skills back up to scratch. Later on I have to go shopping with Mito Oba, so I think I'll just spam clones to work on shurikenjutsu and chakra control. I myself will do physical exercises, have to see if Mito Oba will buy me some wrist and ankle weights to help make my body stronger and faster. With that in mind he exits his room as quietly as he possibly can, careful to wake anyone, and heads downstairs. Once he is sure he hasn't woken anyone he makes his way to the front door, puts on his sandals and heads out the door quietly, quickly making his way out of the Senju compound. As he's walking through the village he's thinking of where he can go to train in private, where no one will see or hear him, when it suddenly comes to him, the Forest of Death, so with his training ground chosen he heads to the 44th Training Grounds aka the Forest of Death. After 20 minuets of walking he reaches the Forest of Death, which is a training ground made up of hundreds of tall trees, and is surrounded on all sides by a tall fence with multiple gates. Naruto proceeds to put his hands in the ram sign and focus chakra to his legs, and when he feels he has enough he takes a huge leap and completely clears the top of the fence and lands inside the forest. He proceeds to run deeper inside till he finds a clearing with a river running through it. Okay, this will do nicely. Time to do this. He puts his fingers in a cross-shaped sign and calls out, Multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu, Taju Kage Bushin no Jutsu. In a puff of smoke 50 clones appear, all looking identical to their creator, who clicks his tongue at the number but shakes it off and proceeds to give out orders. Alright, listen up. I want you guys to split up into 2 groups of 25. The first group will work on chakra control, start with leaf balancing. I don't want to go through life this time with Susi chakra control. Group 2 you're working on shurikenjutsu. Since we have no shuriken or kunai to work with yet, use rocks and sharpened sticks. The clones all nod and salute at this and separate into 2 groups as ordered to go off and do what they're supposed to do. Naruto meanwhile decides to start his exercises, starting off with some stretching to loosen up the muscles, then after that he starts off with 20 laps around the clearing. He finishes his last lap 25 minutes after he back and is only mildly out of breath, so he decides to take a 5-minute breather. He goes over to the stream and takes a handful of water from it and drinks it down. After his break he gets back to work, proceeding to do 50 push-ups, 50 sit-ups, 50 squats, 50 jumping jacks, and lastly 50 chin-ups using a low-hanging tree branch. When he finishes his workout he looks up at the sky and estimates the time to be around 7 a.m., so he decides now is a good time to head back to the Senju house and get a shower, have some breakfast and get ready for his day with Mito. Before he leaves he tells the clones to dispel in groups of 5 2 hours from now. Getting confirmation from the 2 groups of clones he proceeds to exit the Forest of Death and head back into the village proper. As he walks through on his way back to the Senju compound, he notices that all the shops are now open or just opening, and he waves back to those who waved to him first. After another 15 minutes, he gets back to the Senju compound, and as he walks through the streets, every Senju clansman that sees him smiles and greets him kindly, to which he responds in kind. Senju main house. The redhead enters the house and takes off his shoes at the door and proceeds to head towards the stairs. However, he hears a throat clear from the family room and turns to find Mito standing there with her arms crossed over her chest. "Where have you been, young man?" Naruto chuckles nervously but answers, "I went out to train. My 2-chan started training me to be a ninja before he died, and he said that no matter what happened I should stick to my daily training. So I got up at 5 a.m. and headed out to find a good training spot. Once I found a good spot, I started with some stretches, then did some laps around the training ground, then did 50 sit-ups, push-ups, jumping jacks, squats, and chin-ups. Then I worked on my shuriken and kunai throwing for a bit, and then finished off with chakra control." Mito's eyes widen at this news, though she is slightly surprised that he's doing such intensive physical training at 4 years old. Even Tsunade, who's been having physical training from herself, Amaya, and even Itama here and there since she was 3, only does 20 of every exercise, and has yet to work on chakra control. She quickly shakes it off and scowls. "That's all good, Naruto-kun, however you didn't have to leave the compound to train, we have a training ground behind the house. From this point on you will use those training grounds. I don't want to wake up to find you missing from the house and the compound ever again. I thought that you had run away." Naruto's eyes widen at this as he steps off the stairs and walks over and hugs the older redhead, shocking her. "I'm sorry, Mito Oba. I didn't mean to cause you any fear or hurt. I promise from now on I'll use the training grounds out back for my morning training. Please forgive me." Mito just smiles kindly and wraps him in a hug. "You are forgiven, Naruto-kun. Now march upstairs and take a shower, you stink. I'll have some fresh clothes placed on your bed for you, and when you're dressed come on down to the dining for breakfast." The younger redhead smiles and nods his head, rushing upstairs to get freshened up. 20 minutes later finds Naruto entering the dining room wearing different clothes. The outfit he now has on consists of dark gray pants that go down to his shins, a short-sleeved red kimono shirt under which is mesh armor, tied at the waist with a dark orange sash. All, in the eyes of the entire Senju family, he looks a lot more like a ninja now. The first to greet him is the ever-energetic Tsunade. "Good morning, Naruto-san." He smiles at her and responds, "Good morning, Tsunade-san." Then he turns to her parents. "Good morning, Itama-san, Amaya-san." The two reply to him in sync, "Good morning, Naruto-kun-san." As he takes his seat, which is right next to Tsunade and across from Itama at the table, with Tsunade being across from her mother and Mito at the head. As they eat their breakfast of steamed rice, miso soup, grilled fish, rolled omelets, tamagoyaki, tsukemono pickles, and dried seaweed nori, Itama decides to bring something up to Naruto. "So Naruto-kun, Ka-chan says that you left at 5 this morning to train and didn't even leave so much as a note. Do you distrust us so much you wouldn't let us know where you are and what you're doing?" The little redhead swallows his food as Mito glares slightly at her son. However, before she can reprimand him, Naruto responds, "It's not that I distrust any of you, Itama-san. It's just that I'm used to getting up really early to train and I didn't want to wake anyone, plus it never crossed my mind to leave a note seeing as usually I'd be with my 2-chan to train." Seeing the conversation taking a sad turn, Tsunade decides to try to lighten the mood. "Say, Naruto-san, what kind of training do you do? Maybe we could train together from now on." The red-haired boy smiles gratefully to the blonde girl as he responds, "It's nothing too major. I do 20 laps, then after a 5-minute break for some water and to catch my breath, I do 50 each of push-ups, sit-ups, squats, jumping jacks, and chin-ups. After that I work for an hour on shuriken and kunai throwing, and then finish up the last hour with chakra control training. I'm still working on the leaf sticking exercise." Even Itama and Amaya's eyes slightly widen at this, as that's quite the workload for a 4-year-old, and can only wonder why his father would start him with something like that. Tsunade, however, pouts, "You get to do chakra control training. That's not fair. 2-chan, Ka-chan, and Ba-chan said I have to wait until we start working on it in the academy." Naruto chuckles at this. "Well, to be fair, my Ka-chan started me on chakra control training right after I unlocked my chakra. According to her, because of my lineage I have way more chakra than most kids my age. I think she said I have as much chakra as a chunin or something, so it's pretty important for me to work on controlling it. All the adults nod along to this, especially Itama, who decides to voice his thoughts. He's right, Su-chan. Being a full Uzumaki as he probably is means that his chakra levels are much higher than any other child, including yourself. The blonde girl turns to her father, about to ask how he knows that, however he's already anticipated the question. I know from experience. Being half Uzumaki myself, I have larger than average chakra reserves. Of course, being half Senju makes them even slightly larger, but helps me with control. When I was your age I had the chakra levels of a fresh genin, while everyone else in my age group had academy level chakra pools. The only non-Uzumaki or Senju that I've ever known that had a lot of chakra as a kid was the third Hokage. Mito nods along to this, remembering how much chakra the 23-year-old had even as a child of 8, however she shakes her head and clears her throat. Enough of this discussion. Tsunade-chan, since Naruto-kun is now a member of this household, if you wish it and he agrees, he can start helping you to learn chakra control training. The blonde beams at this and turns to the younger redhead, who only smiles slightly and nods his head, which causes her to get excited and hug him tightly, saying over and over again, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." All he can do is slightly blush from the contact, and pat her back. The adults all laugh at the two children. However, Tsunade eventually lets go of Naruto and goes back to eating, allowing the redhead to do the same. Once breakfast is done, Mito stands up and turns to the two children. "Naruto-kun, Tsunade-chan, go get on your sandals, the three of us are going into the village to go shopping." Naruto-kun needs more clothes, as even though Itama-chan's old clothes fit him okay, I don't want him to dress in his hand-me-downs. Also, we need to get Naruto-kun the standard sets of training kunai, shuriken, senbon, and ninja wire. Tsunade immediately heads for the door to put on her sandals, however Naruto looks shyly at the older redhead. He rubs the back of his head and asks, "Say Mito-oba, can we maybe also pick up some wrist and ankle weights? I'd like to use them for training to help increase my strength and speed. I'd heard my two-chan talking once about how weights would help me to get stronger without keeping me from growing." Mito is surprised by his request but internally nods to his father's foresight. "Of course we can, Naruto-kun. That's a very good idea, and in fact I think I'll pick up an extra set for Tsunade-chan. Tell me, Naruto-kun, did your parents begin to teach you any taijutsu style?" The younger redhead shakes his head. "No. Though two-chan did show me his own style. He called it Dragon Fist Ruken. He said his style might not suit me, and that he had a little knowledge on other styles that he'd teach me next year." The woman nods along to this and comes up with an idea. "Okay, well, Tsunade-chan is already being trained in the Senju style taijutsu by her father. Most of the kids at the academy are either learning the academy style or have begun learning their clan's style if they have one. I'll take you into the Senju archives later and we'll find you a taijutsu style to learn, okay?" The boy nods his head to this, and then the two head over to the door to put on their sandals, finding an impatiently waiting Tsunade, and after apologizing to her they head out the door. They spend most of the afternoon going from shop to shop. At the clothing store Naruto finds an outfit that he likes, retaining the red kimono shirt and orange sash, but making the shirt blood red color to match his hair and adding the Uzumaki swirl to the back in white. He trades out the gray pants for dark red ones, as well as changing his white sandals for black, and he gets multiple sets of this outfit. At the shinobi supply store he gets 2 holsters, 2 sets each of practice kunai, shuriken, and senbon, as well as 3 spools of ninja wire. Mito also buys 2 sets of ankle and wrist weights, with the initial weight of the wrists being 5 pounds each and the ankles being 10 pounds each. After their shopping is done they head to a small restaurant for lunch, at which point Mito explains to Tsunade why she got the 2 sets of weights and hands 1 set to her granddaughter. After lunch they head back to the house, and when they arrive Amaya greets them with a slightly sad face, which concerns Tsunade and Mito, the second of which asks, "What's wrong, Amaya-chan?" The blonde woman sighs as she answers her mother-in-law, "Itama is leaving on another mission. He promised me that he'd be home for a week after he got back from the last one, and it's only been 3 days. We got into an argument and he said that it was his duty as the son of the first Hokage to show the strength of the Senju clan. Mito shakes her head at this and pats the woman on the shoulder. He's so much like both his father and his uncle. However, instead of standing here sulking, you should take Tsunade-chan and the three of you should spend as much time together as possible till he leaves for the mission. I'll have a discussion with Saru-chan about not giving Itama any more missions for a month after he returns from this one. Amaya smiles gratefully to her for her words and takes Tsunade by the hand and leads her up to she and Itama's room to do just that. Mito then turns to Naruto. Alright Naruto-kun, I'll take you to the basement now. That is where the Senju clan archives are at, although it's really just a big library filled with many scrolls on Tai, Nin, Gen, Ken, and even some Fuinjutsu. The two redheads go down to the basement, where Mito proceeds to take out a kunai and cuts her finger with it, taking the bleeding digit and swiping it across the door, which then proceeds to glow as seals spread over it. Then there's a click and the glow recedes. Mito smiles and opens the door, leading him inside. What you just witnessed, Naruto-kun, is a piece of our clan's specialty, Fuinjutsu. Moreover, that was a blood seal. You will of course be learning how to create blood seals, but not for a long time. Anyway, the scrolls are arranged by type and the taijutsu scrolls are second shelf on the left. Naruto heads over to the taijutsu shelf and begins to browse through the styles there. After looking for a while, he suddenly feels a pull towards a specific scroll. The scroll in question is blue in color with a picture of stars making up the Big Dipper, and the kanji on the front of it reads Hokuto Shinken, Big Dipper God Fist. As he reads the information on the style, he begins to smile more and more, until eventually he's sold. He rolls it back up and heads over to Mito. I found it. The perfect style for me to learn. He presents the scroll to her, and when she sees which one it is, she gasps, as the style he wants to learn is said to come from before the time of the Sage of the Six Paths and originated in a foreign land, and was said to be the strongest martial art ever. She shakes it off and smiles at him. Well, you certainly shoot for the stars, don't you, Naruto-kun? Well, then you may have that scroll and learn from it. Now let's head back upstairs and get ready for dinner. He nods his head, and with that they head back up to the main floor, and as they do, he finally gets the memories from his clones. At dinner that night, they discuss plans for tomorrow, including Naruto's first day in the academy, and then afterwards go to bed. Leaf Academy. Next day. The Leaf Village Academy is a large building painted in reds. On the front of it is the kanji for fire. As the new school week begins, you can find children of all ages milling about outside along with their parents, awaiting for the teachers to open the doors. However, standing away from all the happy families are two boys. The first leans against the tree in the front of the building. He's a tall boy for his age, standing at 3 feet 9. He has spiky white hair, with dark eyes, and he has red lines under the corners of his eyes, and has slightly tanned skin. His name is Jiraiya, an orphan raised in the orphanage. The second boy is leaning against the side of the building. He is normal height for a boy his age, standing 3 feet 6, has long, straight black hair which goes down to the middle of his back. He has pale skin and slightly delicate features. However, the most striking thing about him are his eyes. They are a golden color with slits for the pupils, and around the eyes is what appears to be purple makeup which extends part way to either side of his nose. His name is Orochimaru Habi, who was recently orphaned when his parents died during a mission. Suddenly the two boys' attention is taken by the fact that everyone becomes silent and stares in one direction. When they look that way, they see why. The Senju family have appeared. However, this time they have an extra person, a boy with short, spiky red hair and blue eyes, with slightly tanned skin, wearing an all-dark red outfit. While most can only wonder at who the boy is, Jiraiya and Orochimaru each have differing thoughts upon seeing him. Jiraiya thinks, tch, another pretty boy, and he's probably a jerk like Orochi-tem. While Orochimaru thinks, he looks strong. Perhaps he'll finally be someone I can test myself against. Everyone begins to talk quietly about who the boy could possibly be, and why he's with Mito-sama and her family. Soon enough, though, the doors open and a couple chunin come out and direct the children inside. Naruto bids farewell to Mito and Amaya as Tsunade grabs him by the wrist and drags him inside into her classroom, leaving the two women to laugh. When they reach the classroom, they find the teacher sitting there waiting and greeting all the students as they enter. When he sees Tsunade and Naruto, he smiles slightly. The teacher is an average-sized man, standing at 5 feet 9, with mousy brown hair, and gray eyes. He wears the standard attire for a chunin, which consists of an all-blue shinobi outfit, and some gray armor over his chest and back. The man's name is Iku's Hachibana, and he's a 35-year-old veteran ninja. He looks down at the children. Tsunade-san, please head inside and take your seat. You young man must be the new student I was told about. Tsunade smiles at her friend and heads inside as Naruto nods his head to the teacher, who continues, now I've been informed that you are a member of the Uzumaki clan and your unique situation. Know that I will not allow any kind of disruptions in my classroom, and I don't care what clan you're from or who you're related to, in my eyes you're just another student. Understand? The redhead nods in agreement. Understood, sensei. Trust me, I'm not here to play around, I've come to learn to be the best shinobi I can be. His response makes the man smirk as remarks, good. My name is Iku's Hachibana, but you can call me Iku's sensei. Now class is about to begin, I'll call you inside in a few moments and you can introduce yourself to the class. He heads inside and Naruto hears him telling the class to settle down as he takes roll call, then makes an announcement. Alright class, before we begin, we have a new student joining us today. Please do your best to give him a warm welcome. Come in. With that, the redhead takes a deep breath and exhales it, then he opens the door and walks inside the class. Immediately his eyes scan the class to see if he can find any faces he recognizes besides Tsunade, and he finds both Jiraiya and Orochimaru, who are on opposite sides of the room and both looking at him intently. Then he catches a face which looks familiar, with a head of spiky silver hair, and immediately knows that's Kakashi's father, Tsukumo Hatake, as only a Hatake could have hair like that. He walks up in front of the teacher's podium, and smiles and waves shyly at everyone, as Iku says, now introduce yourself, just your name, likes, dislikes, and dreams for the future. The redhead nods and looks at the class as he does as instructed. Hello, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. My likes are ramen, learning new things, training, and gardening. My dislikes are perverts, the 3 minutes it takes for the water to boil for ramen, and anyone who puts another down. My dreams for the future are to be a great shinobi, bring everlasting peace to the elemental nations, and to have a family. Everyone has different reactions. All the girls besides Tsunade and one dark-haired one swoon at his dream of having a family. Most of the boys think his dream of everlasting peace in the elemental nations is stupid, all except Jiraiya, Tsukumo, and Orochimaru. After a few seconds, Iku speaks up again. Alright, thank you for that, Naruto-san. Why don't you have a seat next to Tsukumo? With that, he points to the boy in question, who is sitting in the middle section, 3rd row, and Naruto nods and heads up there, taking the empty seat to the left of the silver-haired boy. Thus begins his second stint in the academy. 6 months later. It's now been 6 months since Naruto came back in time, 6 months since he became part of the Senju family, and 6 months since he joined the academy, and it's been a hectic 6 months. He's been training like crazy. Every day he gets up at 5 a.m., goes to the Forest of Death, creates as many clones as he can, which is now 100, he then has them break up into groups of 10 to practice different things. The first group always works on chakra control, which they are now up to tree walking as they mastered leaf sticking. The second group works on shurikenjutsu, improving his aim. The third group works on the first of the basic 3, the substitution jutsu, kawarimi no jutsu. The fourth works on the transformation jutsu, henge no jutsu. The fifth group works on the last, the normal clone jutsu, bushin no jutsu. The last 5 groups have been working on new skills. The 6th group has been working on the body flicker jutsu, shunshin no jutsu, which is a high-speed movement technique. The 7th and 8th groups have been working on the beginning stances of the Big Dipper God Fist, which has been going incredibly well. The 9th group has been learning all about human anatomy to help with his taijutsu style, while the 10th and final group has been working on the fuinjutsu that Mito started to teach him 2 months ago. As far as his physical exercise goes, he's getting more and more fit, especially with the weights on his ankles and wrists, which are now up to 10 pounds on each wrist and 20 pounds on each ankle, and he now does physical training with Tsunade in the mornings. As far as the academy goes, he's quickly gotten to the top of the class, and has been classified as a genius alongside his new friend Tsukumo, as well as Orochimaru. That's another thing, he's made friends with a few people in his class besides Tsunade, the first of which is Tsukumo Hatake, and he's found the boy to be a lot more sociable than his future son. They even spar outside of the academy sometimes. The second person he's made friends with is Jiraiya, who became his friend after he defended the boy from some bullies who were calling him dead last due to his terrible grades and his lacking skills in every ninja field. Ever since, the two have been great friends, and the redhead has even been helping the white-haired boy with his shurikenjutsu and the basic 3. He's also become associated with Orochimaru, who sees him as a sort of rival, but has yet to take the step forward to becoming his friend, preferring to study and train alone. But he's made it his mission to break the young Sannin to be of that, thinking that if he can be a positive influence on the boy, then he won't become a crazy pedophile in the future. Another development in his new life is that it was recently learned that the Senju family will be growing by one more member, as Amaya is 4 months pregnant. Tsunade, upon finding out she was going to be a big sister, was ecstatic, saying that she was going to protect her little brother or sister from any and everything that would harm them. Naruto just congratulated Itama and Amaya on their news while going back to his calligraphy practice, which was a prerequisite to learn Fuinjutsu. As a result of Amaya's pregnancy, Itama decided to stop taking missions for a while, instead taking up a job in the torture and interrogation division, also giving him more time to train Tsunade and help Naruto with refining his new taijutsu style against a superior opponent. But today will be different, as today Naruto and the rest of the class will begin training in their elemental affinities, but for the redhead, he'll start learning how to properly use his bloodlines after today. Leaf Academy. Iku's classroom. The veteran shinobi looks at his class, and can't help but to think about how much they've grown in the last 6 months, which is why he has no problem with starting them on today's lesson. He clears his throat, getting everyone's attention as he speaks. Alright class, today we'll be learning something entirely new. Now, as you all know, we've been teaching you all 3 basic jutsu, those being the substitution, transformation, and clone. Now those were to prepare you for more advanced techniques, and today is the true start of learning those more advanced techniques. As he looks around, he sees that he has every one of their attention, and smirks internally at it. He proceeds to take out 2 stacks of papers and continues, today we will be testing your elemental affinities. Now each ninja in the world is aligned to a specific elemental nature, which makes using jutsu of that element easier and jutsu of opposing elements harder. This paper I have here is called chakra paper, and each of you will be receiving a piece. What it does, it tells you your affinity. Now pay close attention to what I say next, as I don't want to repeat myself. Everyone replies in unison, yes Iku's sensei. He then goes into what Naruto has dubbed his Uruka mode, and starts to lecture. Now each of the 5 elements does something different to this paper. If your affinity is fire, it will burn to ash. If your affinity is water, it will get wet and turn soggy. If your affinity is earth, it will crumble and turn to dust. If it is lightning, it will crinkle up into a ball. Finally, if it is wind, the paper will split down the middle. He then takes one piece into his dominate hand, which is his left, and puts it between his fingers. All you do is you place the paper between 2 fingers of your dominant hand and channel your chakra to it, and it will tell you what your affinity is. After saying this, he does just that, and the paper burns down to ash, showing that he has a fire affinity, which causes all the now 5-year-olds to stare in awe, before they start to talk excitedly about what their affinities could be. He stomps on the floor to get them quiet. Alright, when I call your name, come up here, take a piece of paper and channel your chakra. At that point he begins to call names, and Naruto doesn't really pay any attention to most of them, as most of them get either fire, water, or earth. However, he pays attention when his friends are called, first of which is Tsukumo Hatake. The silver-haired boy walks down the aisle and up to the teacher. Taking his piece of chakra paper, he places it between the fingers of his right hand and applies his chakra, and surprisingly it crinkles up into a ball and emits sparks. Ikus whistles at this. Well, looks like we got our first special case. You have a lightning affinity, and from the looks of it, a strong one. Congrats, Tsukumo-san. Tsukumo nods gratefully to the man and heads back to his seat with a smile on his face. The next person Naruto pays attention to is right after Tsukumo, Orochimaru Habi. As the pale loner makes his way down to the instructor and does as everyone else did, however his is shocking too, as when he channels his chakra to the paper it splits in half. Ikus shakes his head at this. Damn, 2 for 2 on the prodigies and their affinities. You have a wind affinity Orochimaru-san, which for the land of fire is incredibly rare. I've no doubt you'll be a powerful shinobi in the future. Orochimaru smirks at this as he heads back to his seat, and Naruto once again tones out Iku's sensei, that is until he hears another friendly name called, Jiraiya no name. He watches as the white-haired boy scowls at the addition of, no name, to his first name, but still heads up to the teacher to take his paper. When he does, his paper burns to ash, showing he has a fire affinity, and after tossing away the remaining ash he heads back to his seat. A few minutes later he hears Tsunade's name called and pays close attention to see what her elemental affinity is. The blonde-haired girl excitedly takes the paper, hoping to have the same 2 main affinities of her grandfather, water and earth, so that she might also have inherited his wood-release bloodline. However, she is disappointed when the paper in her hand crinkles up into a ball, indicating her main affinity is to lightning. She scowls at the paper and tosses it in the trash as she turns on her heels and head back to her desk, pouting. After that, Naruto just tunes out the names again, thinking about the basic storage seal he was taught by Mito and how to improve it. He just barely manages to tune back in when he hears the name Izumi Uchiha, seeing as Uchiha comes before Uzumaki. The girl in question has the usual black hair and onyx eyes of the Uchiha clan, however her hair goes down to her mid-back, and she has a kinder looks to her face than most Uchiha. Izumi takes the chakra paper and channels her chakra, and unsurprisingly she gets a fire affinity, seeing as most Uchiha have it. Though she seems disappointed she does, maybe she was expecting a different result. After she gets back to her seat he finally hears it, Naruto Uzumaki, you're up. At this he smiles and hops out of his seat, making his way excitedly down to the front of the classroom. When he reaches the front he excitedly takes the paper and places it between the pointer and middle fingers of his right hand and channels his chakra. What happens next shocks everyone, even the usually stoic Ikus. His chakra paper cuts into 4 pieces and each piece does something different. One gets soggy, one burns to ash, on crumbles to dust, and the last crinkles up and emits sparks. Internally the redhead laughs at the faces everyone is making, however outside he tilts his head to the side confusedly and asks, did I do something wrong, sensei? What does this mean? The man quickly coughs into his hand to regain his composure and answers, no, you didn't do anything wrong, Naruto-san, it's just that I've never seen something like this before. What that means is that you have a main affinity to all 5 of the elements. You are without a doubt going to be a powerhouse when you're older. You can take your seat now. Naruto nods his head and heads back to his seat and chuckles at the unbelieving face his friend Tsukumo is making. After that, class goes by as normal, even though most are wondering how the redhead got an affinity to all 5 major elements. After the academy lets out, with Ikus telling them that they'll all be given E-rank jutsu of their elements to learn for then next 6 months starting tomorrow, Naruto heads home with Tsunade. However, when they get to the house they find Mito waiting out front, but standing next to her is Hiruzen Sarutobi wearing his official Hokage robes and hat, which causes the redhead to tense up slightly. Tsunade however greets the adults with sourly, "Hey Ba-chan, Saru Oja-san." Noticing this, Mito looks concerned and asks, "What's wrong, Tsunade-chan? Why do you look so sad?" The little blonde pouts as she explains, "We had our elemental affinities tested today, and I have a lightning affinity." Blinking at this, the red-haired woman gives her granddaughter a confused look. What's so bad about having a lightning affinity? Tsunade sighs, "I wanted to have the same affinities as Hashijiji. I wanted to be able to use wood release like him, and prove that I'm worthy to carry on his legacy." Sarutobi kneels down and takes her by the shoulders at that. "Tsunade-chan, you don't have to have Hashirama-sensei's bloodline to continue his legacy. You are his legacy. You carry his blood and his will of fire. Never forget that, young lady." This makes her feel much better as she rushes inside, leaving the 2 adults with Naruto, who upon seeing their looks chuckles nervously. 1 year later. Forest of Death. It's now been a year since the revelation that Naruto has all 5 major elements. That day when he got home he had a conversation with Sarutobi and Mito, who were both wondering how he managed it. However, he stuck to his innocent act and told them he had no clue, and that he didn't know what elements his parents had as they had never used elemental jutsu in front of him before they died. Sarutobi then offered to allow him to graduate early so that he could get a jump on learning to harness his elements and whatnot, but he declined, stating that he'd like to graduate with his friends, something with the 24-year-old understood. Over the last year, Naruto and his friends have all gotten taller and stronger. It's now a three-way tie between Naruto, Sakumo, and Orochimaru for Rookie of the Year, while Jiraiya, despite Naruto's help, is still the dead last, although that's only because his taijutsu is abysmal, and he can't make a bushin to save his life. Tsunade is by far the strongest kunoichi in the class, and unknown to the redhead has begun to develop a crush for him due to his kind nature and drive to improve himself, also because of how he is with her baby brother. That's another thing. About 8 months ago, Amaya gave birth to a healthy baby boy, with tufts of light brown hair and his mother's green eyes. They named him Nawaki Senju. Today is a break day from the academy, and Naruto can be found in his usual clearing in the Forest of Death, having left behind a strengthened shadow clone at the Senju house so as to keep them from being suspicious. The redhead takes a breath as he prepares to begin the next phase of his training, which is learning how to actually use the 3 bloodlines given to him by the tailed beasts. He takes a breath, makes the cross-shaped seal and calls out, multi-shadow clone jutsu. In a puff of smoke 200 clones appear. Another great thing about the year is that his reserves have gone back up to Anbu level. He decides to hand out his orders. Alright guys, break up into groups of 20. First group, continue chakra control, combine the water walking exercise with the leaf and kunai balancing exercises. The first group salutes and heads over to the river to do just that. He turns to the second group. Group 2, work on the stances for that kenjutsu style I found in the Senju archives. Group 3, you're on the next kata for the Hokuto Shinken. The second and third group move off in different directions to do as they're told. The kenjutsu style Naruto is referring to is called Hidden Mitsurugi Ryu, Flying Heaven Governed Sword style, and is another ancient style he found in the Senju archives after taking an interest in kenjutsu 6 months ago thanks to his friendship with Sakumo. He turns to the next 2 groups. Group 4, you get to read the intermediate anatomy books. Group 5, your job is to work on the new seals Mito Obasan taught me. With their orders in place, they go to do as told, even though the 4th group groans about having to read. He turns to the next groups. Groups 6 and 7, your job is to split into 4 groups of 10. Each subgroup is to work on earth, fire, wind, and water nature training using leaves. The 2 groups salute him and move off to do their jobs. He turns to the last 3 groups. Alright, groups 8, 9, and 10, your job is to begin training in our bloodlines. Group 8, you got magnet release, Group 9 lava release, and Group 10 boil release. Get to it, boys. The 3 groups of clones move off to start their training, grousing about lazy as originals. Naruto himself kneels to the ground and takes out a storage scroll, releasing weighted metal plates from on seal within it, and proceeds to add 1 more plate each to his wrist and ankle weights. Doing this increases their weight to 50 pounds per wrist, and 60 pounds per ankle, after which he re-seals the remaining plates and puts away the scroll and begins to do his daily exercises, which have also increased to 50 laps, 100 each of push-ups, sit-ups, squats, jumping jacks, and chin-ups. Because of his workouts and a healthy diet, he's much taller and better fit than he was the last time he was 6 years old, now standing at 4 feet 1, making him one of the tallest of his class, just below Jiraiya, who now stands at 4 feet 3. After his physical training is done, he checks the time to see that he has only a few minutes to get home from breakfast, so he body flickers from the forest and appears in his room after a few jumps, where his clone is already waiting for him and it looks as sweaty as himself. He dispels it and heads to the shower. While he's getting himself clean, he can't help but think about how graduation is only another 2 months away, and wonders who his teammates will be and who their Jonin sensei will end up being. When he finishes and gets dressed, he heads downstairs for the usual family breakfast. As he enters, he finds that only Amaya and little Nawaki are already present. He smiles at them. Good morning, Amaya-chan, and a special good morning to you, Nawaki-kun. He tickles the baby's tummy, getting him to laugh and clap his hands, as the blonde woman smiles at him. Good morning, Naruto-kun. Did you have a good training session with Tsunade-chan and Tama-kun? The redhead nods. Sure did, though Tsunade-chan still can't keep up with me, although she comes pretty close, must be her quarter Uzumaki heritage. Amaya just giggles at this. and a moment later said girl comes walking in. Tsunade has changed only a little in the nearly 2 years he's been living with them. She's grown taller, standing now at 3 feet 9, with a slender build for her age due to her training. Her hair is now kept up into a single high ponytail, and she now dons a light green short skirt kimono, tied tightly at the waist with a dark blue obi. The skirt has a slit in the left leg for ease of movement. Also, you can see a hint of mesh under armor over her chest. On her wrists and forearms is red arm warmers which covers her wrist weights. Her feet are bare right now, but she has bandages wrapped around her ankles and halfway up her shins which cover her ankle weights. All in all, he can definitely see hints of her future beauty in her features now. Seeing him staring at her, she blushes slightly, but decides to mess with him. See something you like, Naruto-kun? The redhead, realizing he was staring, blushes and shakes his head. Sorry Tsunade-chan, I was just thinking how much you've grown since we became friends. The blonde smiles at this and responds in kind, you've grown to Naruto-kun. I don't care what anyone says, to me you're the best shinobi in the academy. Orochimaru and Sakumo are second best compared to you. Naruto nods his head in thanks as they take their usual seats at the table to eat, and a moment later Itama and Mito enter and breakfast begins. After breakfast, Itama looks at the two kids. Hey Su-chan, Naruto-kun, how about we have a spar? The two of you against me. The blonde nods her head excitedly while the redhead smirks confidently. You think you can take Tsunade-chan and I together, old man? After all, we are the best male and female student in the academy. The brown-haired man laughs loudly at this. Ha 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 ha. Confidence, I like that. After all, I'd expect nothing less of an Uzumaki. Don't worry about me, kiddo, I'll be fine. After all, I received private instruction from 2 Hokages, as well as an Uzumaki seal mistress. Let's head out back. The three proceed to head out to the training grounds out back, which is within sight of the back porch. The two 6-year-olds stand across from the 30-year-old man, as they all proceed to get into their taijutsu stances. Tsunade and her father both take the stance for the Senju-style taijutsu called 1000 branch fist, Senin Shibuken, which is a style that revolves around overwhelming your opponents with powerful and unpredictable strikes. Naruto, however, takes the stance for the Hokuto Shinken. He takes a strong stance with his legs spread apart and bent, with his left leg leading his right. His hands are positioned in a specific way, with his right hand down low near his right thigh, and his left hand held up high in the air, and both are open-palmed. At an unseen signal, the two academy students and the Jonin shinobi rush each other and begin their spar. Leaf Academy. 2 months later. Graduation day. The day has finally arrived. Today is the day that the students will take their first step to becoming real ninja and become genin. Everyone arrived early for the tests and have been chomping at the bit for it to be over. The first part of the graduation exam was a written test which had 20 questions that were meant to test their tactical thinking as well as their knowledge of history. The second part of the exam was shuriken and kunai throwing. In that test you got 10 kunai and 10 shuriken, and each hit of the bullseye for the kunai was worth 10 points, while the each hit of vital spots on the straw dummies for the shuriken was worth 10 points each. On that test most of the civilian-born got a 60/100ths for both, which is just passing for the kunai and shuriken. However, the ones who did better were the clan kids, who got 70 or 80/100ths on kunai throwing and 70/100ths on the shuriken. Only 2 kunoichi got more. Tsunade got 90/100ths on both, while Izumi Uchiha got 85/100ths on kunai, as one of her kunai was an inch to the left of the bull's eye, while she got 90/100ths on the shuriken. After that, Jiraiya ended up getting 85s on both, showing his improvement. Then the three geniuses all got 100/100ths on both kunai and shuriken, although Naruto had to show off and throw all his kunai and shuriken at once, blindfolded. The third test was a taijutsu spar with a chunin. The rules were that you had to last at least 2 minuets to pass, and if you could last the full 5 without being co-ed or knocked out of the ring, then you'd get a 100 for the test. Most of the civilian-born kids just barely lasted the 2 minutes before being defeated. The clan children each lasted 3 minutes before being forced out of the ring or forfeiting. Tsunade went against Ikus himself and lasted 4 minuets and 25 seconds against him before he defeated her, while her rival Izumi lasted 4 minuets and 15 seconds against a chunin kunoichi. Then Jiraiya got his chance and actually lasted 3 minutes and 50 seconds using the Academy style before being knocked out by his Chunin opponent. Once again Naruto, Sakumo, and Orochimaru excelled in this test. The first one of the three to go was Sakumo, who managed to last the full 5 minuets and even managed to get his opponent down to his knees. After Sakumo was Orochimaru, who also lasted the full 5 minuets and even managed to beat his opponent at the last second by forcing him out of the ring. Naruto was last as usual, and he unsurprisingly lasted the full 5 minuets against Iku's sensei, but he used his Hokuto Shinken and hit the pressure points in the Mon's left arm, right leg, and spine to bring him make it so that he couldn't fight anymore until the damage was reversed. When it was over, the redhead reversed what he did on the teacher, gaining the man's gratitude, and was told that his style was going to be dangerous when perfected. Now they were waiting on the final test, which is the ninjutsu portion. From what he's heard, the ninjutsu test consists of the basic 3, as well as an E and D rank elemental jutsu. Eventually Iku's sensei begins to call names to come to the back room, and one by one nearly every person comes back in wearing a shiny new blue or black headbands. Of course, 1 or 2 of the civilian kids fail and don't get their headbands. All of the clan kids come back out wearing headbands, some over their forehead, others around their necks or arms. Naruto really pays attention when his friends are called. Tsunade goes inside and nails the ninjutsu portion. First she substitutes with a fern in the corner, then she transforms into her grandmother. After that she makes 2 perfect clones, and then body flickers from one side of the room to the other, leaving behind leaves. For her E-rank lightning jutsu she uses the lightning release, static strings jutsu Raiden, Saiteki Suji no Jutsu, to create strings of electricity that connect to a practice dummy and delivers small shocks to it. Then for her D-rank lightning jutsu she uses lightning release, lightning bolt jutsu Raiden, Reikurai no Jutsu, which she makes the hand signs and releases a short bolt of lightning from her hand which strikes the dummy and leaving electrical burns on its chest. Due to her perfect execution she receives her headband, which she asks for a green cloth, and ties it around her head proudly. As soon as she walks out with her protector, Naruto smiles proudly at her, causing her cheeks to heat up as she heads back to her seat. The next of his friends to go inside is actually Jiraiya, and the white-haired boy looks nervous as heck. Jiraiya, once inside, performs the substitution with a chair, then transforms into a perfect copy of the third Hokage. He just manages to create 2 usable clones, and body flickers about 100 feet, which is the least amount required to pass. Then for his E-rank fire jutsu he uses the fire release, burning leaf jutsu Kaden, Tensho Rifu no Jutsu, in which he creates a small amount of burning leaves in his mouth and spits them out at the test dummy, causing minor irritation to the eyes and chest. Finally, for his D rank he uses fire release, flash fan jutsu Kaden, Senko Uchiwa no Jutsu, which allows him to take in a fair amount of air while making 3 hand signs and then breath it out in a short funnel of flames which lasts only a couple of seconds in a versus shaped wave which causes light burns to the dummy. When he's done he receives his headband and walks out proudly, giving Naruto a thumbs up to show that his remedial lessons really helped out. Next is Orochimaru, who as usual is calm. He performs the first 4 techniques perfectly, going so far as to transform into a perfect reflection of his dead father. For his E-rank wind jutsu he uses the wind release, wind clone jutsu Futon, Kei's Bushin no Jutsu, which allows him to create a clone of himself made of wind which he makes attack a dummy and it dispels right after in a gust of wind. For his D-rank jutsu he uses the wind release, projectile deflection blast Futon, Hasha Taitawami Bakuhatsu, which allows him to build up a lot of air in his chest, and the release it is a gust from his mouth strong enough to push back the dummy. Once he's done he gains his headband which he ties around his left arm, and walks back into the classroom and quietly takes his seat. After that is Sakumo, who performs the first 4 perfectly. Then for his E-rank lightning jutsu he uses lightning release, lightning clone jutsu Raiden, Raiko Bushin no Jutsu, which allows him to create a solid clone made of lightning chakra. The clone proceeds to attack the dummy and each strike delivers shocks, and then it dispels itself. For his D rank he uses lightning release, electron jutsu Raiden, Denshi no Jutsu, which after the hand signs are complete creates a crackling, sparking, sphere of electricity in his hands which he tosses at the dummy, and when it hits it electrocutes it. Tsukumo comes out wearing his headband the normal way, which just makes his spiky hair even spikier. The last one to get Naruto's attention is of course the second best kunoichi of the class, Izumi Uchiha, who looks nearly as confident as Tsunade did before her. Izumi, like all the rest, performs the 4 basic techniques perfectly. For her E rank she uses the Fire Release, Finger Flame Jutsu Kaden, Shushi Hano no Jutsu, which allows her to channel fire chakra to her finger and create a small ball of flame over it, which she uses to carve the word idiot into the dummy. For her D rank she uses the Fire Release, Flame Knife Jutsu Kaden, Hano Naifu no Jutsu. For this technique she takes out a kunai and channels fire chakra into it, lighting on fire but leaving it unharmed, and then she throws it at the dummy and it cuts right through it. Izumi exits the room wearing her headband as a hairband, tying it around her hair. Then Iku's finally calls out, "Naruto Uzumaki." The redhead stands up to head into the back, however he hears his friends all call out to him, "First Tsunade, you can do it, Naruto-kun." Then Tsukumo gives him a thumbs up, "Crush it, Naruto," and Jiraiya crosses his arms, "Show up Orochi Tem." Naruto just smiles at all his friends one last time before walking into the back room. Once inside he finds himself standing in front of Iku's sensei and 2 other Chunin instructors, as the man who has taught him for the last near 2 years addresses him, "Alright Naruto-san, for starters you need to demonstrate the substitution, then the transformation, then the clone jutsu, and finally the body flicker. When that's done, since you have 5 elements, we'll need you to demonstrate 1 jutsu of each of them." The redhead nods at this but asks, "Say sensei, if I performed a different clone technique for the first portion, like say the earth release, shadow clone Doden, cage bushin, could that count towards my clone jutsu and 1 of my elemental jutsu?" Ikus and the other 2 Chunin blink at this before conversing together quietly for a moment. After their conversation is done, Ikus turns back to Naruto, "We've come to the decision to allow it. The point is to make sure you make clones, no matter what kind they are." The boy nods his head and proceeds to begin the test, as he first substitutes with one of the instructors before switching back, then he transforms into a perfect copy of the first Hokage. After that he performs the earth release, shadow clone as he said, and creates 2 clones of himself made from mud. After he dispels the 2 clones, they leave behind puddles of mud which he smiles apologetically for. Next he performs water release, gunshot Sweden, Teppadama, in which he makes a few hand signs and takes a breath as his chest swells, and then he releases condensed balls of water from his mouth which move at high speed, hitting the dummy and puncturing holes into it. After the dummy is replaced with a new one, he then performs fire release, fireball jutsu Kaden, Hidama, in which after making the 3 hand signs he takes a breath and releases a medium-sized ball of flames from his mouth which burn orange in color and set the dummy on fire instantly. After the Chunin put the dummy out with water release, Naruto moves on to his 4th element, performing lightning release, lightning ball Raiden, Raikyu, in which he raises his hands over his head and creates a small ball of electricity between them, then he brings his hands down tossing the ball at the dummy. When it hits, it covers the dummy in a swirl of electricity, causing electrical burns all over it. Then for his final jutsu he uses wind release, Gale Palm Futon, Repusho, in which he first takes out a kunai and tosses it, then he claps his hands and releases a gale of compressed winds which speed the weapon up and causes it to sink deep into the heart of the dummy. Once he finishes his last jutsu, the instructors congratulate him and he takes a blue headband and puts it around his forehead just like old times. When he walks out of the room, Ikus is following behind him, and as he makes up to his desk, Tsukumo high-fives him. The Chunin clears his throat to get everyone's attention. "Alright everyone, first off I want to say congratulations to all of those who graduated. You have taken your first steps on your road to becoming splendid shinobi and kunoichi. For those who failed, better luck next year. Now you have the next week off, but be back here at 10 a.m. sharp next Monday morning for your team assignments and to meet your Jonin sensei." With that he dismisses them and everyone rushes out of the room. However, Naruto's friends gather around him as Tsunade hugs him. "We did it, Naruto-kun. We're one step closer to being real ninja." The redhead chuckles at the blonde and pats her back. "We sure are, Tsunade-chan. But next week we'll find out who our teachers for the foreseeable future will be, and I have this feeling that most of us will get someone powerful." Tsukumo chuckles at that. Well, I just hope that I'm paired with you as a teammate, Naruto. I think you and me together with a competent kunoichi could be an unstoppable force. Jiraiya shakes his head. In any case, how about we all go out to celebrate our graduating? Pretty boy Hatake is buying. Naruto nods his head. Alright, sure. That's so kind of you to buy everyone lunch, Sakumo. Tsunade nods sagely as well. Yes. You have a kind heart, Hatake-san. Said boy, however, just sits there with his mouth hanging open as he tries to formulate words. The redhead then notices Izumi and Orochimaru both by themselves and gets up and heads over to them, first the Uchiha girl. When she notices him, she looks at him confusedly. Can I help you, Uzumaki-san? Naruto smiles softly at her and responds, just call me Naruto. I hate formality. No, you can't help me, but perhaps I can help you. You see, a bunch of us are going to lunch to celebrate graduating, and I thought maybe you'd like to come along. Sakumo is buying. She proceeds to look at him incredulously. Is this a pity offer? Because I don't need, nor want your pity. I may not be like others of my clan, but I am still proud to be an Uchiha. The redhead shakes his head. It has nothing to do with pity. Though I will admit there is another motive to my offer. The way I figure it is that we might get teamed up together, and it's better to start to get to know a potential teammate now rather than later. Besides, everyone can use friends, even an Uchiha. As she looks at him, trying to detect any lies, she finds none, only honesty, and so she give him a gentle smile. Well, in that case then I would love to join you for a free meal. Naruto smiles at that. Good, head on over to the group and introduce yourself. I have one more person to talk to. With that, he heads over towards the loner prodigy, while Izumi walks over to the little group and properly introduces herself to them. Naruto arrives at Orochimaru's desk just as the boy is getting up to leave, and when he sees the redhead, he asks, "What do you need, Naruto-san?" The redhead looks at him seriously. You don't need to be alone, Orochimaru. I know the pain you must be feeling deep down. Losing your parents at a young age, it's the kind of thing you never quite get over. My parents have been dead over 2 years and I still haven't gotten over it. The pale boy looks at him surprised, but quickly bows his head and hides his eyes behind his bangs. How do you do it? How can you be so cheerful despite the loss of your parents? Naruto pats his shoulder. You take it one day at a time, and you realize that no matter what, your parents loved you and they wouldn't want you to mourn their deaths forever. They would want you to live your life, make friends, keep moving forward, and have great adventures. That doesn't mean you should forget them. You can still remember all the good times, just don't get stuck in the past, because that solves nothing. Orochimaru looks at him in astonishment, seeing the wisdom in his words and realizing that if his parents could see him now, that his father would smack him upside the head and tell him to go play with other kids and have fun. With that in mind, he smiles softly and nods his head to the redhead. Thank you, Naruto-san, I will try to take your advice. Naruto just smiles at him and responds, well, you can start by joining me and the others for lunch. Our fellow genius Sakumo is buying. The black-haired boy stands up and says 3 words, lead the way. With that, the 2 geniuses rejoin the group and the now 6 genin leave the classroom heading for a barbecue restaurant, not noticing Iku's smile at the scene as the man thinks to himself, I have the feeling that group is going to change the world in the future. I look forward to seeing where their paths take them. Last time. With that in mind, he smiles softly and nods his head to the redhead. Thank you, Naruto-san, I will try to take your advice. Naruto just smiles at him and responds, well, you can start by joining me and the others for lunch. Our fellow genius Sakumo is buying. The black-haired boy stands up and says 3 words, lead the way. With that, the 2 geniuses rejoin the group and the now 6 genin leave the classroom heading for a barbecue restaurant, not noticing Iku's smile at the scene as the man thinks to himself, I have the feeling that group is going to change the world in the future. I look forward to seeing where their paths take them. Now, Leaf Academy. 1 week later, team assignment day. The week since graduation has gone by quickly. After leaving the academy that day, Naruto's group went to a barbecue restaurant owned by the Akamichi clan and had a nice lunch. Everyone talked and had a good time. Though there were funny moments, like when Jiraiya got into an argument with Orochimaru over a piece of pork, and of course the funniest moment of all, when the bill came and Sakumo was forced to pay it, causing the silver-haired boy to cry a river of tears over the loss of his allowance money. After that, everyone went their separate ways, promising to meet up again in a couple days for a group spar. When Naruto and Tsunade got home, they were greeted to a party from the entire Senju clan to congratulate them for becoming genin. Each received gifts from the main family members. For Tsunade, she received a new kunai and shuriken holster from her parents, while Mito gave her a beginner's scroll on medical ninjutsu written by Hashirama himself, something which excited her a great deal. For Naruto, though, he received from Amaya a gray cargo vest lined with silver fur around the collar and the bottom. When asked why, she simply said, "I thought it screamed Naruto." He thanked her kindly for it and slipped it on immediately. From Itama, he received 5 scrolls of C-rank elemental techniques, one of each of the 5 main elements. Along with it, he got a joking warning: "Now don't go using those techniques to hurt people." However, from Mito, he received a new katana. The blade in question is approximately 28 inches in length. The blade is made of chakra-conductive metal and polished to a sheen. The tsuba is circular and takes the shape of the Uzumaki swirl, while the grip is wrapped in black-colored cloth. The sheath is made of a strong wood and colored black as well, with images of red plum blossoms decorating it. He took it with reverence as Mito explains to him that the blade's name is Kurohime, Black Princess, and that it had once belonged to a samurai who had married into the Uzumaki clan and was a master of his kenjutsu style, Hidden Mitsurugi Ryu. That man's name was Kenshin Himura. Naruto thanked her with a hug for the sword and said he would use it well. After that, Naruto and Tsunade spent the rest of the week hanging out with everyone and getting to know the new additions to the group. In the course of the week, the 2 girls of the group developed a friendship and mutual respect due to their shared wish to be great kunoichi. Now here they sit awaiting Iku's sensei to enter the room and tell them who they'll be teamed with. Even though Naruto is already sure of one team for sure, the future Sannin taught by Hiruzen Sarutobi. After a few more minutes, the brown-haired man comes in and clears his throat to get everyone's attention for the last time. "Alright, look alive everyone. Today you find out who you will be placed into 3-man squads with, and who your Jonin sensei, commander, will be. Pay attention, because if you miss your name, I'm not going to repeat myself." Everyone proceeds to pay attention at that as the man begins to call out team number and names. Naruto, however, does as he with Iruka in the future, tunes him out, as he takes out a scroll and some ink and begins to work on another seal taught to him by Mito. This time it's a basic barrier seal. After working on it for a little bit, he tunes back in when he hears Iku say, "Team 7 will consist of Orochimaru Habi, Tsunade Senju, and Jiraiya. Your sensei will be Hiruzen Sarutobi." Hearing this, everyone responds differently. Most of the class can't believe that the Hokage, the man called the god of shinobi, is actually taking a team. Orochimaru is pleased by the announcement, knowing that he can learn to be a truly strong ninja under the 3rd Hokage. Jiraiya, while happy to be learning from the Hokage, is a little put off being teamed with Orochimaru and Tsunade, as he fears they'll make fun of him once they're away from his friend Naruto. Tsunade, however, is ecstatic that the man who was taught by both her grandfather and granduncle is going to be her teacher, plus it doesn't hurt that she's known him all her life. Ikus quickly clears his throat, bringing order back to the class. "Yes, I know it's shocking that Lord Third is taking a team, however he believes that it's time for him to pass down what he knows to the next generation. Now to continue, Team 8 will consist of, as he names, of 3 more no-name genin and 1 more jonin. Then he reaches Team 9. Team 9 will consist of Tsukumo Hatake, Izumi Uchiha, and Naruto Uzumaki. Your jonin sensei will be Danzo Shimura. Now that one surprises Naruto. Don't get him wrong, he's happy that he's being paired with his friend Tsukumo as well as his new friend and second best kunoichi in the class, Izumi. No, what surprises him is their sensei, the man referred throughout the elemental nations as the darkness of shinobi, Shinobi no Yami, the very same man who in the future had wanted to turn him into a weapon from the day Kurama was sealed inside of him. He remembers that after Pain's invasion, Tsunade fell into a coma and Danzo was named at the 6th Hokage candidate, Rokudaime Hokage Koho. Danzo was the man who had run a secret division of Anbu loyal only to himself called Root, and had wanted the Land of Fire to rule all the elemental nations. The man had gone so far as to have his right arm replaced with one made from the cells of the first Hokage and then implanted with multiple pairs of Sharingan. The man had ended up being killed by Naruto's wayward teammate Sasuke Uchiha, after a prolonged battle, which if memory served included Danzo summoning some kind of animal. He shakes off his memories and realizes that this Danzo has not yet become the one he remembers, and if he goes about it right might never become that man completely. Plus Danzo is supposed to be the second strongest guy man in the village right now after Sarutobi, seeing as they grew up rivals, meaning that he's at least an S-rank shinobi. He's brought out of his thoughts by Sakumo clapping him on the shoulder. How about that, Naruto? Looks like we're teammates, and our third member is Izumi-san. The redhead smiles at his friends. Yeah, it's great. Also, from what I've heard, our sensei is pretty strong. The silver-haired boy gives him a confused look. However, they both pay attention to Ikus again. The man finishes naming off the teams and says, "Alright, those are all the teams. Your Jonin sensei will be here to pick you up soon, so until they do, why don't you all sit with your teammates and get to know them? It's been my pleasure to be your instructor for the last 2 years, and I look forward to watching each of your careers." With that, he turns and walks out of the room, leaving the genin to rearrange themselves into their teams. The third person, who usually sits at the same desk as Sakumo and Naruto, gets up and moves, and Izumi comes over and takes a seat. The Uchiha girl smiles at her male friends. "Looks like your insights were correct, Naruto. We've been teamed together. So what were you two boys talking about?" Naruto smiles at her while Sakumo has a contemplative look and responds, "Naruto was saying that our Jonin sensei is strong, and I was about to ask him how he knows that." The redhead smirks at this. "Well, since I live with the wife of the first Hokage, I've met a lot of people over the last 2 years. Chief among those is the third Hokage, his teammates Homura-san and Kaharu-san. All three of them have mentioned Danzo Shimura before. According to Hiruzen, the man is the second strongest ninja in the village after himself. As he puts it, Danzo is easily an S-rank shinobi. He's smart, cold, calm, and collected." Izumi nods along to this. "I've also heard of Danzo Shimura. My cousin Kagami Uchiha was his teammate as genin and still goes on missions with the man at times, and he always speaks highly of his skills as a ninja." Sakumo takes a thinking pose at this. "So what you two are saying is that we're going to be learning under a man nearly as strong as the third?" They both nod their heads in response, which causes him to smile slightly. "Good, then that means we won't be falling behind our friends who are trained by Lord Hokage." The other two chuckle at this, as they all fall into an easy conversation. Over the next 2 hours, each team's sensei comes in and takes them away, until the only ones left are teams 7 and 9. The two teams come to the agreement to sit in the same section. When Tsunade brings up an interesting topic, "Do you guys think that Hiruzen sensei and Danzo sensei will have us do joint training sessions and joint missions?" However, before any of them can answer, Tsunade and Naruto hear a very familiar voice respond, "That's a very good question, Tsunade-chan. The answer to that is there is a good possibility of joint missions, not sure about joint training sessions. What do you think, Danzo?" The 6 genin turn to see that standing in the doorway are 2 men. The first is easily recognizable to all of them, as his face is carved upon the Hokage mountain, as well as the fact that he gave a speech on their first day of the academy. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage of the Leaf, the god of shinobi, has changed very little in the last 2 years. He is now 25 years old. The lines under his eyes are a bit more defined and slightly longer. His hair is still spiky, and his goatee is still short. Today he's wearing a casual black outfit, black pants tucked into mesh armor over the shins, a black long-sleeved kimono shirt with the end of the sleeves tucked into mesh armor over the forearms and white around the collar. Under the shirt is mesh armor as well. The second man, however, is new to every one of them. He's a handsome man with a serious face. There's an X-shaped scar on his chin. He has shaggy black hair which reaches eye level. His eyes are brown and sharp, making him look a little like a hawk. He wears a black bodysuit with wrist and shin guards, and his headband is tied around his head as it should be. He's also only slightly taller than Sarutobi, standing at 5 feet 8. This man is Danzo Shimura, the darkness of shinobi, and Team 9's new sensei. The 25-year-old, S-rank shinobi grunts a little. "I think that our teams would benefit from sparring and training together once a month, Hiruzen. As for joint missions, it is inevitable that the two teams will place together for certain missions, as you cannot take your team out of the village being that you are the Hokage." Of course, rather or not they will be our teams remains to be seen. With that, he turns to the 6 genin. Team 9, meet me at training ground 9 in 5 minuets. Then he body flickers away, leaving Naruto, Tsukumo, and Izumi confused, but the three proceed to follow his example, saying goodbye to their friends and body flickering away. Hiruzen smiles as his future team, alright, meet me at training ground 7 and we'll discuss what happens next. With that, he to body flickers away, his team following after him a few seconds later. Training ground 9. 2 minutes later. The 3 genin of Team 9 appear at training ground 9 just 2 minutes after Danzo. The man hums in acceptance of this. Alright, now that you're here, let's start off with introductions. I want your names, your likes, your dislikes, your current skills, and your hopes for the future. I'll start. They all nod at him, paying attention raptly. My name, as you already know, is Danzo Shimura. I am a Jonin of the Leaf, formerly an Anbu captain. My likes are training, the village, and my fiancé. My dislikes are slackers, traitors to the village, and Hiruzen always being a step ahead of me. As for my current skills, well, that I'll leave a mystery for you to find out later. I'll say this though, I have a main elemental affinity for wind. As for my hopes for the future, I want the village to thrive. They all blink at this as Naruto thinks, so he's not yet a war hawk. Well, that's good. Hopefully me and the team can change him for the better. He comes back to reality when Danzo points to Tsukumo. You next, Silver. The silver-haired boy scowls slightly at this. My name is Tsukumo Hataki. I'm the heir to the minor Hataki clan. My likes are training, learning new kenjutsu stances, spicy foods, and my friends. My dislikes are sweet foods, people who mess with my friends, and anyone who bad talks kenjutsu. My skills are pretty good. I can throw kunai and shuriken with absolute precision. Other than that, I'm not telling. Danzo nods at this and then turns to Izumi. Your next, Uchiha girl. Izumi scowls at him and replies, my name is Izumi Uchiha. I am a member of the Uchiha clan. My likes are training, learning all about genjutsu and medical jutsu, dango, flower arranging, and my new friends. My dislikes include the arrogance of most of my clan, perverts, people who say women can't be as strong as men, and those who put down genjutsu. As for my skills, I think I'll take your route, sensei, and keep those a secret for you to figure out on your for my dreams for the future. I want to be a great kunoichi and have my name etched into history as the greatest mistress of genjutsu ever. Then I want to settle down and have a family with a man I love. The black-haired man chuckles at her attitude, then turns to his last student. You're the last one, Red. Instead of getting angry or annoyed like he expects, Naruto just smiles as he responds, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. I'm a member of the Uzumaki clan, as well as part of the Senju family. My likes are ramen, training, gardening, my friends, and the village. My dislikes are the 3 minutes it takes for the water to boil for ramen, perverts, people who look down on others just to make themselves feel better, and those who trample on nature. My dream for the future is to bring peace to the elemental nations through understanding and common goals, then to have a family. Danzo blinks at this, and can't believe the conviction behind the boy's words. However, he snorts at them. Peace through understanding and common goals, that impossible in the world we currently live in, Uzumaki-san. Also, I notice you skipped over your skills. The redhead shakes his head as he replies, I don't think it's impossible. You can disbelieve all you want, but I'll prove you wrong. As for my skills, not telling. Tsukumo and Izumi chuckle at his last words, while Danzo looks contemplative. However, he shakes it off and informs them, alright, well, you've all passed the first part of your real genin test. You all kept your skills secret, which is a must for a shinobi. However, that was just the preliminary part. The main part starts now. At this, Tsukumo and Izumi are confused as the black-haired girl questions, what do you mean, real genin test? I thought we passed the genin test in the academy. The 25-year-old smirks at this and answers, that test was to see who had what it takes to become ninja. The real genin test is administered by the jonin and is meant to weed out the weak from the strong. Amongst all the graduates, 66% will fail their real genin test, the other 33% will end up passing and becoming actual genin. Time to find out if you three are part of the second group. Both Tsukumo and Izumi balk at this. However, all three notice that Naruto isn't at all surprised by this revelation. Tsukumo decides to ask his friend, "Why don't you seem surprised by this, Naruto?" The redhead smirks, "I knew about the real genin test a long time ago. Itama-san told me about the test that his uncle the second Hokage gave to Lord Third and his teammates when they became genin. I just kept it to myself because it's supposed to be a surprise for the newly graduated genin." Danzo however sighs at this, placing his left hand at his waist and his right hand against his headband. "I'm going to have a talk with Itama-senpai about revealing secrets." Naruto shakes his head and replies, "Don't be too hard on him, Danzo-sensei. In his defense, he'd had a lot of sake before he told me." The black-haired man shakes his head in exasperation, but quickly gets back on track. "Alright, well, your test will be this." He takes 2 scrolls from his pouch and holds them out for them to see. "It will be your job to get these 2 scrolls from me. Within each scroll is the registration forms for active shinobi." Izumi decides to point out the obvious, "But sensei, there are only 2 scrolls." He nods his head, "You're correct, Uchiha-san. This means that only 2 of you will pass. The one who does not get a scroll will be dropped from the shinobi program completely and have all their chakra sealed off forever." Each of them react shocked to this, even though unknown to all, Naruto's shock is faked. The man is satisfied by their faces and continues, "Your mission is to get these scrolls from me before lunch. If you don't, one of you will be tied to the posts and will have to remain here for all of lunch. However, as an added challenge, you'll have locate me in order to even attempt to get the scrolls from me. When you find me, come at me with the intent to kill. Your time begins now." With that, he throws down a smoke bomb, causing the 3 children to close their eyes and cover their noses and mouths. When they open their eyes again, Danzo is gone. Tsukumo and Izumi immediately prepare to head off in different directions to find Danzo and get a scroll. However, Naruto stops them. "Wait, guys." This causes them to pause and look at him questioningly. "You need to stop and think. Why would only 2 if us pass while the third fails? As far as I know, the Leaf is known for its 4-man teams, not 3-man teams." The 2 6-year-olds consider his words, and it's Tsukumo who comes to the logical conclusion first: "It's a test of teamwork. Danzo-sensei is trying to pit us against each other so that we automatically fail." The redhead nods at this as Izumi chimes in, "Then we need to work together to track him and take the scrolls from him." The 2 boys nod along to this, and so the 3 fresh genin gather together in a circle and put their heads together to come up with a plan to take on their new sensei. Unknown to them, the man they're conspiring against is watching them from the surrounding trees with a smirk as he thinks to himself, "They figured it out pretty quickly." Then again, Uzumaki and Hataki are 2 of the 3 prodigies of their class. Hiruzen was a fool to take on the balanced team. He should have paired 2 of the prodigies together with the Senju heiress. That would have been an unstoppable team. Oh well, his mistake is my gain. Let's see how well they do together against me. Just then 3 children break apart and Naruto proceeds to do something that shocks Danzo very much, for it is something the second Hokage used to do all the time. The redhead places a finger to the ground and closes his eyes and extends his senses, searching for Danzo's chakra signature, letting the man know the boy is a sensor. A few moments later, Naruto smiles and opens his eyes and stands up, then using hand gestures signals to his teammates where their teacher is, and the 3 proceed to vanish via body flicker. A moment later, his danger sense screams at him, so he jumps off the tree branch he was sitting on, and a moment later he sees out of the corner of his eye a huge fireball set the whole tree on fire. He lands in the clearing he began in and instantly takes out a kunai to blocks a bunch of shuriken, then tosses the kunai in the direction the stars came from, only to hear the thunk of metal hitting wood. "Smart, used a replacement as soon as I threw the kunai." Then from the river he hears his red-haired student's voice call out, "Water release, raging waves, Sweden, Mizorupa." He turns to see Naruto spewing a large volume of water from his mouth like a waterfall. He speeds through hand seals quicker than the eye can see and takes a breath as he calls out, "Wind release, vacuum wave, futon, Shinkaha." As he begins to spin and releases the breath he took, which compresses it into a single blade of wind which covers a large area, cutting through the wave of water. When he stops spinning, he doesn't get any time to rest, as he's placed on the defensive as all 3 of his students attack him with taijutsu. He smiles internally as he notices them working in perfect harmony, taking in the fact that while two of them pour on the pressure, the third tries to sneak a reach for his pouch to get the scrolls, only for him to send one of the others into that one. After 20 minutes of straight taijutsu, he sees Izumi go through hand seals before calling out, Demonic Illusion, Hellfire, Megan, Jigoku Guka no Jutsu. A moment later he finds himself engulfed in red-hot flames. However, he realizes it's just a genjutsu, and so he cuts the flow of chakra through his body, and then releases a huge burst of his chakra which shatters the illusion just in time to hear Naruto say, Hokuto Hyakuretsu Dan 100 crack snap. As he rushes the man and unleashes a barrage of punches at him that makes it look like he has 100 fists. He notices as he's blocking all the 6-year-old strikes with ease, although most low to mid-level chunin would have trouble with them, that he is now missing his wrist and ankle weights. After the last strike, Naruto hops back from the man and soon his teammates join him with smiles on their faces. He scowls at the smiles on their faces. I don't know what you're smiling about. You haven't even gotten a hold of the scrolls from me. Just then Izumi and Tsukumo go into their hip pouches and pull out the scrolls, shocking him as he goes back to his pouch and finds that the scrolls aren't there anymore. Tsukumo decides to gloat a little. You were saying, Danzo-sensei. Looks like you were so busy with Naruto that you forgot it was 3-on-1. He smirks at this. You got me there. Got to say your taijutsu is impressive, Uzumaki. Now since Hatake and Izumi got the scrolls, that means that they pass and you fail. He expects that hearing this will cause Naruto to turn on the other two, however he's further shocked when they throw the scrolls back to him with Izumi commenting, sorry Danzo-sensei, but if Naruto fails then so do we. After all, it was him who kept us from turning on each other, and the majority of our battle plan came from him. So either pass all of us or don't pass any of us. At the end she punctuates her statement with a confident look. He turns towards Tsukumo and asks, do you feel the same way, Hatake? The silver-haired boy nods his head seriously. He looks at the three of them standing together confidently and sighs, all right then, you all pass. This causes them to all smile happily and celebrate with a group high five. All right, settle down. Yes, you all pass and the four of us are now officially Team Danzo. As you surmised in the beginning, it was a test of teamwork, and the reason that 66% fail is because they choose to look out only for themselves and not refuse to work together. They forget their history and that the reason the Leaf is the strongest of the 5 great villages is because of teamwork as established by Lord First Hokage. They nod along to his words as he continues on, now you have the rest of the day off. I have to go and inform Hiruzen that you 3 passed. I want you all here tomorrow at 6 a.m. for team training, then after lunch we'll take a couple of D ranks, then after that a couple more hours of training and then home for dinner. Now get out of here, you brats. The 3 laugh at that and turn to leave, however the black-haired man calls out, Naruto, stay back for a moment. The redhead looks confused but nods, turning to his friends, why don't you guys go ahead, I'll meet you guys at the Red Leaf to celebrate our becoming a team. They nod and walk off. As he turns back to the Jonin, what did you need, Danzo-sensei? The man stares at him seriously before answering, I wanted to know about your taijutsu style. I've never heard of a Hokuto style before. Where exactly did you learn it and what's its focus? I noticed that you aimed your strikes for certain areas. Naruto blinks at this, impressed with the man's observation skills. It's actually called Hokuto Shinken. I learned it from a scroll that was in the Senju archives thanks to Mito Obasan. It's an ancient style from before the time of the Sage of the Six Paths. It focuses on attacking 708 pressure points in the human body to destroy from within. But it can also be used to heal. Danzo is shocked to hear this, and impressed by the style as it seems similar to the Hyuga clan's Gentle Fist except it doesn't target the Tenketsu. He shakes it off and nods his head to the boy, it sounds like a truly deadly style. Also, I've heard you have all 5 elemental affinities. I can't really help you much with most of them. I can teach you wind manipulation as well as some wind jutsu, and I can help with fire manipulation as it's my secondary element. Other than that, every other element you'll have to learn on your own. The redhead nods accepting to this and asks, is there anything else, Danzo-sensei? The man shakes his head at this, so the boy turns around and runs off. A few moments later, Danzo himself leaves the training ground via body flicker, making his way to the Hokage's office. Hokage office. 15 minutes later, all of the Jonin sensei of the newly graduated genin are standing around the office of the third Hokage, however said man is absent, which is causing a few to get impatient. A few seconds later the 25-year-old Kage arrives behind his desk via body flicker and looks at them all apologetically. Sorry to keep you all waiting, my test with Team 7 ran a little long. Well, let's begin. As I call each of your names, step forward and say if your team passed or failed. With that he calls the Jonin of teams 1 through 6 and hears that only Team 4 passed. Then it gets to Team 7. Well, I'm happy to announce that Team 7 passed by the skin of their teeth. During the initial test, which was the bell test, they thought of only themselves. Tsunade, Senju and Orochimaru hubby managed to each get a bell, while Jiraiya was tied to the stump. I failed them, then gave a secondary test. I gave a lunch box each to Orochimaru and Tsunade and told them we would start again after lunch and not to feed Jiraiya. Then I body flickered away to hide and watch what they would do. This test they passed by each offering the boy a part of their lunches. In the end they understood the importance of teamwork and thus Team Hiruzen is now official. Everyone is surprised to hear this except for Danzo, who knew the man wouldn't have failed the granddaughter of the founder or the third prodigy of the academy. After that Team 8's sensei says that her team failed, and that brings it to Danzo. Team 9 passed with flying colors. That really shocks everyone, as the man has never passed any team before, so Sarutobi decides to ask, really Danzo? That's surprising considering your track record. Pray tell, how did they pass your test? The black-haired man continues to lean against the wall with his arms crossed as he answers, well, they got the gist of the test from the beginning. Uzumaki got it right off and then helped the other two to come to the same conclusion. After that I was surprised to find out that Uzumaki is a censor type like Lord Second and they found me pretty quickly. After that they kept me on my toes with good teamwork. First the Uchiha girl flushed me out of my hiding spot with a fireball, then the Hitaki boy tried to get me with shuriken which I blocked with a kunai and then threw the kunai at him, but he substituted with the almighty log. At this everyone chuckles and bows their heads in reverence of the log. He clears his throat and continues, then Uzumaki used one of his 5 elemental natures and fired off a C rank water jutsu at me which I countered with a B rank wind jutsu. After that the 3 attacked me in unison with taijutsu and worked pretty damn well together, as 2 would try to distract me while the 3rd went for my pouch, that failed. So then the Uchiha cast a genjutsu on me to make me think I was consumed in flames. I broke it pretty quickly, however it gave Uzumaki enough time to set up an advanced taijutsu attack. Blocking the boys' strikes distracted me enough that I lost track of the other 2 and they managed to get the scrolls from me. When I told them they passed and Uzumaki failed, they threw the scrolls back to me and said they all pass or they all fail. So I passed them for showing solidarity. Therefore Team Danzo is now official. Everyone looks on in shock and some pride at this, as he addresses Sarutobi. Hiruzen, I have to say you were a fool to not take all the prodigies together, that would have been an unstoppable team. As it is, the 2 prodigies I have as well as the second best female student are going to be a hell of a team. I'm actually looking forward to training the snot-nosed brats. The 3rd Hokage smiles at this, glad to hear you say that Danzo. I look forward to our first joint team spar training session, to see who the better teacher is. After that it continues on to the last team, Team 10, who unsurprisingly failed. With that over, Sarutobi dismisses everyone except Danzo, and as the man stands there staring at his former friend and rival he can't help but to think back to more innocent days. He quickly shakes his head and speaks to the former Anbu, Danzo, I want you to make sure you get to know your students. Cultivate relationships with them, be an older brother figure to them, and guide them down a good path. Don't be standoffish with them and treat them as disposable tools. Remember that shinobi are people and each one has something different they fight for. His fellow 25-year-old just nods his head at this. Don't worry Hiruzen, if I'm going to take the time to teach these kids then I'm not going to treat them like they aren't worth my time. You just worry about your team and be prepared to nurse their broken egos in a month from now. If there is nothing else, Hokage-sama. The brown-haired man shakes his head and the other man body flickers away, leaving the Hokage to do his paperwork and think about what kind of training to put his new team through starting tomorrow. 3 months later. Training Ground 9. It's been 3 months since the team placements and the True Genin tests. In that 3 months both Team 7 and 9 have continued to grow as shinobi. With Team 9 they have been learning a great deal from Danzo. Every morning except Saturdays and Sundays, they gather at Training Ground 9 for morning training. They start off every morning with a workout of push-ups, sit-ups, jumping jacks, squats, chin-ups, laps around the training grounds, and then a group spar, strictly taijutsu. After that they take a break for an hour, then they move on to improving their skills, first taijutsu, correcting all the mistakes from their earlier spar, and moving on to the next set of kata of their individual styles. After taijutsu is kenjutsu. Now that was a bit hard for Izumi at first as she'd never even touched a sword, so Danzo told her to ask her uncle Kagami to help her find a kenjutsu style that would suit her. The next day she showed up with dual kodachi and an old kenjutsu style called kodachi nito ryu, double kodachi style. So since then she's been learning how to use it to a good level while her teammates have been increasing their proficiency with their own unique styles. After kenjutsu is ninjutsu training. Danzo has the belief that in order to properly use elemental ninjutsu one has to have a good grasp of said element. In that vein he's been teaching them the first steps of elemental manipulation, for each one it's different. For Naruto he has to cut a leaf in half using wind chakra, for Izumi she has to burn a leaf starting from the center by converting her chakra into pure heat, and for Tsukumo he has to make the leaf crumple up between his hands by turning his chakra into electricity. Each one has made pretty good strides. Naruto has managed to cut 3/4 of the leaf with his wind chakra, Izumi has managed to burn half of her leaf from the center with her fire chakra, and Tsukumo has managed to crumple 3/4 of his leaf with his lightning chakra. Besides that he's taught them a few more jutsu for each of their elements, so they now each have 3 C rank elemental jutsu apiece. After ninjutsu of course is genjutsu, a subject which Izumi excels in, especially now that she has her Sharingan. At the end of the first month of their training Danzo decided it was time that girl activate her family's bloodline and so he asked the members of his former Anbu team to attack the girl on her way home and make their attempts to kill her as real as possible. The ploy worked and that night Izumi activated the Sharingan. Ever since her genjutsu prowess has increased, even though she chooses not to learn any new genjutsu with her bloodline. Naruto and Tsukumo on the other hand have managed to learn only a few minor genjutsu demonstrating that neither one will ever be true genjutsu types. After genjutsu training is always lunch, then they take on D ranks which in Naruto's own words are meaningless tasks that the civilians are too damn lazy to do themselves. Things like painting fences, weeding gardens, walking dogs, and the worst of all, capturing the Fire Lady's cat, Sora. They've taken that mission 5 times already, and each time the redhead swears that Sora must be the father or grandfather of Tora the demon cat from his original time. Just like the latter mentioned cat, Sora hates his and Tsukumo's guts and always seems to relax when held by Izumi. It's enough that Tsukumo always comments about how cats like that or why he's a dog person. After Evil D ranks they return to the training grounds and do 2 more hours of training, focusing mainly on teamwork and chakra control. After the 2 hours are up they head home for dinner and to rest up to start the process over the next day. On their days off each one spends time relaxing and working on individual projects at their own homes. For Izumi she spends her time continuing to learn her kenjutsu so that she can catch up to her teammates in that area. For Tsukumo he spends time with his father learning the responsibilities of being the next head of the Hitaki clan, as well as taking care of the puppies of the family's dog summons. Naruto spends his days off continuing his studies of Fuinjutsu under the careful watch of Mito. Recently he got some good news from the elder redhead. He has reached a level in Fuinjutsu that he is now considered a level 2 seal master, which means he's only 8 levels away from being a level 10 seal master. However she stopped his excitement at the announcement by telling him about 18 levels from being an Uzumaki seal master. But said that once he reaches level 10 she'll give him her brother-in-law's notes on a special Jikuken ninjutsu that the man developed, and that she has no doubt that he'll be able to improve it when the time comes. Another thing to happen over the last 3 months is that Teams 7 and 9 have had 2 training, sparring sessions to test their skills and the efficiency of their teachers. Unfortunately for Team 7 they've lost both the spars, mainly because Team 9's teamwork is way better, as they work as a cohesive unity, while the three members of Team 7 spend half their time fighting each other, especially Jiraiya and Orochimaru. Tsunade tries to play mediator between her teammates, however that quickly fails and her temper comes to the forefront when Jiraiya calls her flat chest and she proceeds to beat him down. However, thanks to the training part of the sessions, the 2S rank shinobi have found out that the members of their teams work well together, especially with Naruto leading all of them. That's something both men noticed immediately in the first session. Initially Team 7 continued to bicker, blaming one another for their loss, however the redhead stepped in and stopped their arguing and said they were all to blame and needed to work on how to be a team better. Then he led them through training, instructing each of them on where they needed to be and what they needed to work on to be better. They even decided to switch up their team's configuration during the second training session. They paired Naruto with Tsunade and Jiraiya first, and the Uzumaki didn't disappoint, leading the two other kids to a victory over Orochimaru, Tsukumo, and Izumi in a game of capture the flag. Then they paired him with Tsukumo and Orochimaru to see if having the three prodigies together would work out, and it did marvelously. The three worked in perfect unity, each one understanding what the other was thinking immediately, and they even won the second game of capture the flag. Then they paired Naruto with the two girls and the same results, he led them to victory, both of them hanging on his every word and command, especially Tsunade, who they noticed has a huge crush on the boy. Finally they teamed him up with Jiraiya and Orochimaru and he actually managed to get the two boys to put aside their differences and work together as a unity and just barely eke out another victory. After witnessing this they realized that among the group of 6 that Naruto is without a doubt the linchpin as well as the de facto leader. Today finds the two teams preparing for their third spar in the last 3 months. Hiruzen and Danzo are standing to the side ready to call the match to begin. Both teams are huddled together in separate circles discussing how to best handle their opponents. Naruto gives the plan to his teammates, alright, here's how this is going down. Tsukumo, I want you to focus on Orochimaru, you're about equal in taijutsu, but if it comes down to ninjutsu your lightning element cancels out his wind and vice versa. The silver-haired boy nods to this, good thinking as usual Naruto. I have to say that I was going to suggest just that, you know me well buddy. The redhead smiles at him. He then turns to Izumi, Izumi, you're going to take Jiraiya. His weakness is genjutsu, he so hit him with one that will take him out of the fight. I'll take Tsunade-chan, I know how to neutralize her taijutsu style, also just like with Orochimaru and Tsukumo, I have the canceling element to her lightning. When I get the chance I'll slap a paralyzing seal on her, despite being part Uzumaki Shisuke Fuinjutsu. The black-haired girl nods along to this, understood Naruto. I'll hit the little pervert with the perfect genjutsu for someone like him. Tsunade-chan may get mad at you for using a seal on her. Naruto chuckles at this, it'll be okay, even if she gets mad she'll forgive me by the end of the night, after all we're best friends. This causes his teammates to sweat drop and think, more like because she has a freaking crush on you moron. With that they break apart and stand ready for the spar. Team 7 on the other hand are not as good on the planning as Jiraiya can be heard loudly declaring, I'm kicking Tsukumo's butt. Orochi Tem, you can have Naruto, and flat chest you can take billboard chest. Now let's go. His comments have the affect of making Orochimaru, Naruto, and Tsukumo to shake their heads, while Tsunade and Izumi both gain tick marks over their eyebrows as they both go red in feminine fury. However, before the blonde-haired girl can do anything about it, the impatient boy goes rushing forward to take on his self-appointed opponent. Seeing this, Team 9 immediately go into action. Tsukumo and Naruto vanish via pure speed and appear in front of Orochimaru and Tsunade respectively and begin to engage them in taijutsu. Jiraiya seeing this groans, oh come on. I said I wanted Tsukumo, damn it. Then he feels someone tap him on his shoulder and feels a shiver go down his spine as he turns to find Izumi smiling sweetly at him with her Sharingan active. As soon as he makes eye contact with her he hears, demonic illusion, anti-pervert jutsu. As soon as those words are uttered his world changes, as he proceeds to be subjected to unspeakable images and starts screaming like a little girl before passing out muttering, to many dudes. Too much pays. Izumi smirks in triumph as she gives him a good swift kick to the balls for extra measure and walks away, while hearing Tsunade say, way to go Izumi-chan. The two 25-year-old teachers each do different things. Danzo chuckles at the stupidity of the white-haired boy, while Hiruzen puts his face in the palm of his hand and shakes his head. Why must Jiraiya-kun be such a fool? Naruto and Tsunade continue their exchange of taijutsu, as they seem to be equal, causing the blonde-haired girl to smile. Good to see you're keeping up with your training, Naruto-kun. But I thought that by now you'd be much better than this. The redhead shakes his head with a smirk. Oh, you want to see better, Su-chan? This causes her to blush and mess up on of her strikes, giving him the chance to get into her guard, as he goes into his hip pouch, scaring her. However, her fear quickly recedes when she sees he's just getting out a paper. However, she gets a surprise. He slaps it to her chest, makes a ram seal and says, "Paralysis seal activate." Right after he says it, the paper on her chest lights up with chakra and sends a miniature shock through her nervous system, causing her body lock up and making her unable to move. She proceeds to glare at him. No fair, Naruto-kun. You distracted me so you could use Fuinjutsu on me. Let me go right now. Naruto smiles sheepishly at her. Sorry, Tsunade-chan, I can't do that. Not until Sakumo has finished with Orochimaru. Also, you should know that when it comes to being a ninja, there is no such thing as fair. So please just stay there for a little while longer and then I'll release you. She just proceeds to glower at him in response. However, she doesn't get to do it for long as she looks over to the fight between Orochimaru and Sakumo to see that the silver-haired boy now has the point of his tanto to the throat of the down black-haired boy. You have no choice, Orochimaru, you must yield. The pale-skinned boy knows he's right, so he sighs and responds, "You are correct, Sakumo-san, I yield." Sakumo smiles at this as he puts his blade away and helps his friend up. Naruto proceeds to make the ram seal again and say, "Paralysis seal release." The seal on Tsunade's chest glows again and then falls off. A moment later she finds herself able to move freely again. Izumi can be seen to be waking up Jiraiya by pouring cold water over his head. The two teachers look at them all seriously, and as Hiruzen is about to speak to his team, first a bird-masked Anbu appears kneeling in front of him. "Hokage-sama, we have a problem." The brown-haired man instantly goes into his Hokage mode. "Report." The masked man immediately responds, "Our sentries have reported that there is a large group of bandits making their way towards Tanzaku town. According to the reports, they number at least 200. Also, it appears that they are being led by a missing nin from Rock." Hiruzen takes this in and asks, "Who is the nin and what's his level?" The elite shinobi answers promptly, "The ninja in question is Daichi Kurotetsu. A-rank Jonin level. The mayor of Tanzaku requests an immediate mission to take out the group." Before Sarutobi can respond again, Danzo speaks up, "My team and I would be more than happy to help the people of Tanzaku town and destroy the bandits, Hokage-sama." The brown-haired man looks at his former friend seriously, "Are you sure about this, Danzo? This mission is B rank and your team are still fresh out of the academy." The black-haired man nods his head, "Yeah, I'm sure. In fact, you could make it 2 missions. AC rank for the genin of protecting Tanzaku and eliminating the bandits. As well as AB rank for myself of taking out Kurotetsu." The third Hokage thinks about this a moment and then nods his head, "Alright then, but the condition for this is that the C rank is for both teams 7 and 9 together. I think it's time my team got some experience outside the village walls as well." Danzo nods in acceptance of this as he continues, "Alright then, teams 7 and 9, your mission is to protect Tanzaku town from the bandit horde, and when the opportunity presents itself, eliminate every last one of them. Danzo Shimura, sensei of Team 9, your mission is to track down the rough rock shinobi Daichi Kurotetsu and send him to the next life. You all set out in 2 hours, dismissed." He gets a round of yeses from all the children as they rush off to their homes to prepare for their first ever real mission. Hiruzen turns to Danzo with complete seriousness, giving the man a look that proves why he is called the god of shinobi. "Their safety is in your hands, Danzo. Make sure they all come back safely and with only minor injuries, because if they die or come back seriously wounded, then I will remind you exactly why I am known as the god of shinobi." Danzo for his part seems unfazed, however he nods his head, "Don't worry, Hiruzen, the children will be perfectly fine. I want all them to come within even a meter of my fight with Kurotetsu. Bandits pose no real problem for shinobi, even if those shinobi are a bunch of 6-year-olds. Sarutobi nods empirically at this as his former friend body flickers away to prepare for the missions. The man called the third Hokage decides he should get back to his office to finish paperwork as well as prepare for Mito to come to him to complain about giving Tsunade and Naruto AC rank. Perhaps I can convince her that there won't be any kind of problem by assigning another Jonin to watch over the two teams while Danzo is completing his mission. Last thing I need right now is to have the matriarch of the Senju clan screaming in my ear with that infamous Uzumaki temper. With that thought in mind, he himself body flickers back to his office hoping nothing terrible happens. Thanks for listening. In the next part. In the meantime, please leave a review, I would love to hear your feedback. Especially if it helps me improve the overall story.